What is up, everybody? Welcome to Stat Diggers, where we go balls deep into the stats for this upcoming card. And man, what a card we have! UFC 264. One of the best cards of the year. I call it the second best card of the year. But regardless, lots of great fights on it. I think the main card is absolutely stacked outside of maybe the Yana fight, but still. You have Conor McGregor, Dustin Poirier, the trilogy. Really looking forward to see that. I think the prelims have some exciting fights on it as well. And as always, we're just going to go balls deeper and get into the stats. Maybe throw out a play here or there. Not many spots stick out for this card. It's going to be kind of a light card for me, but the spots that I do have, I do like quite a bit. And of course, we are here with my Uncle Weezy. What is up, Uncle Weezy? Are you looking forward to this card, man?
Not, man. I mean, this is the biggest star that MMA has probably ever seen in Conor McGregor. And, you know, even though he's getting towards the end of his career, he's still only 32 years old. We got a trilogy here with Poirier. I can't wait for that fight. And, I mean, there are so many great fights on this card. There's a lot of fights on this card to like for a lot of different reasons. There's even some unintentionally funny fights on this card. But we're going to get into all of it, man. We got 13 of them to go through here. And I can't wait to jump into this, man, and really go balls deep with you here.
Sounds good. Always fun going balls deep with my Uncle Weezy. But before we get started, if you guys can leave a like on this video. You guys killed it with the likes last week. I think we got well over 200. Let's keep going. Let's get those likes up. It's a big card. But one small like really does go a long way. It does help out me, Uncle Weezy, and Pub Sports Radio. And also subscribe here to Pub Sports Radio. Have content all throughout the week, all different sports. I will be going live at 7 o'clock p.m. Eastern time on Tuesday as well, covering the DraftKings side of things. So check that out also. And with that said, I say we get into it. Before we do, though, we'll hit up the chat real quick. Thank you all for hanging out each and every Sunday, 7 o'clock, 15 p.m. Eastern time. Getting a lot of positive feedback on the show. A lot of people seem to be liking it, so we'll keep doing it. We like it. Me and Uncle Weezy definitely enjoy coming in here on a Sunday. We like getting our research done. We got our research done early this week as well. It feels good. It feels good to be out ahead of everybody and beat some line movement. So what is up, grateful dude? Thanks for going deep. Good luck on all your action. Appreciate that. Love going deep every Sunday. The perfect show to go balls deep. I 100% agree. What is up, Sev? Just sat down for dinner. Let's go. I agree. We got Jason in the chat. Let's go. The dynamic duo, Brady and Weezy. What is up, Thomas? We got the General in the chat. What's up, General? Such a stacked fight card. I agree. I mean, it's not the best card in the world, but some of these matchups are phenomenal. Uncle Weezy. You guys rock. You should do a show with Clint. Thanks for the vids. Yeah, if Clint wants to come on sometime, that'd be sweet for sure. I'm happy 4th bitch is going to be a fight week. DFS and Uncle Weezy, happy 4th to you as well. If you guys hear fireworks in the background, that's probably on my side. People are setting off fireworks already. Shout out from Brazil. What is up, Juan? Hopefully you're doing well. Let's go. Finally catching you guys live on the show. Thank you for hanging out, Smiths. Value on Ryan Hall, plus 180. Such a good fight. We'll definitely talk about that. But before we talk about that fight, we will talk about probably the most hilarious fight on the entire card. This fight, I said it on my prediction video today, this fight very well could be the lowest level fight of the year and arguably the lowest level fight in UFC history. And we'll kind of talk about why. So we have Zhuang, who is 26 years old, 6'3", 72-inch reach, going against Amadowski, who is 33 years old, 5'10", 74-inch reach. So Hugh is going to have a 5-inch height advantage and a 2-inch reach disadvantage. Hugh is somebody that made his UFC debut at heavyweight. The next fight he went to a light heavyweight, and then now this fight is at middleweight. So you got to imagine he's going to have a size advantage here against Amadowski. We kind of take a look at their last couple fights. Both fighters have 2 fights in the UFC. We have who did lose to Cyril Asker in his UFC debut, got submitted there, and then lost to Rashad Coulter in what was a very, very close fight, but they did give the nod to Coulter there. As far as Amadowski, got absolutely demolished by Krzysztof Jotko. There were 20 or 30-26 scorecards, and even one 30-25, and then got knocked out by John Phillips. I think that was John Phillips' only knockout win in the UFC. So very interesting fight. Uncle Weezy, I'm really curious to hear what you had to say about this fight.
Those of you out there who don't think that statistics can be funny, just sit back and listen here, because we got some hilarious ones here. I mean, when you look at, and I mean, any UFC fighter could kick my ass, but we're talking about bottom of the barrel guys right here. We got 2 guys that have 2 UFC fights. They've both lost both of their UFC fights. Both of them have been out for like almost 2 years. This is pretty funny. Let's look at the pro experience. 5 professional fights for Hu Yazong and 10 for Alan Amadowski. We've got a 3-2 record for Yazong, 8-2 for Amadowski. Average fight time for Amadowski is 4.1 minutes. So this guy gets in and out. Same thing with Yazong, 7.6. Yazong's had a under 5-year professional career, about 8.5 for Amadowski. Both these guys 0-2 in the UFC. Yazong has 3 wins, 2 of them by knockout, 1 of them by sub, so he has 100% finish rate. And Amadowski has 8 wins, and 100% of them came by knockout. So, both of these guys are finishers, and both of these guys have been finished in half of their pro losses, as Amadowski has 1 loss by knockout, 1 by decision, and Yazong has 1 loss by submission and 1 by decision. Let's get into these striking numbers and see some really pathetic stats here. 4.43 significant strikes landed per minute out of 8.51 for Yazong, 52% striking accuracy. That's really not that bad. And then we look at on the Amadowski side, and you got a guy that is landing less than 1 significant strike per minute, 0.52. Out of 1.83 offered for a stellar striking accuracy of 28.57%. Neither one of these guys has knocked anyone down. Alan Amadowski is getting ratioed at a rate of 6-1. His opponents land 6 significant strikes for every 1 that he lands. So he's landing 0.52 and he gets landed on 3.14. And Yazong also gets outlanded by his opponents in the 2 losses that he's had in the UFC. Lands 4.43, absorbs 5.23. Both of these guys have been knocked down. Yazong's been knocked down in almost 1% of the significant strikes absorbed. And for Amadowski, it's over 2%. Not much meat on the bone here. If we get into the grappling statistics, we see that neither one of these guys has completed a takedown. And both of these guys are boasting a 0% takedown defense, as they have both been taken down on all of their opponents at times, 4 for 4 for both of them. We see Amadowski, the control time kind of tells the tale, as he is only controlling his opponents 1.42% of the time and being controlled 63% of the time. So he's almost being out-controlled by his opponents at a 40-1 rate. While Yazong's fights have been 24% for, 23% against. So Yazong doesn't get takedowns, he gets taken down. Amadowski doesn't get takedowns, he gets taken down. Both of these guys have been controlled. Both of these guys have fought some pretty bad opposition. For instance, Alan Amadowski has a loss to John Phillips, who's actually 1-5 in the UFC. So, and John Phillips, we were talking about this. We were kind of laughing about the stats, and you said, that probably had to be the worst performance by anyone, because Amadowski only landed 6 significant strikes against Krzysztof Jotko. But then we found out that somebody has landed less significant strikes in a fight, and it was the guy who beat Alan Amadowski, John Phillips, who actually only landed 5 significant strikes. So the 1-800-GAMBLER number is up there for a reason, or at least it was. And if anybody that I know has a bet on this fight, I am calling 1-800-GAMBLER on them. I'm sending the orderlies to their house with a straitjacket to put them into a re-education camp for a couple of weeks to kind of teach them that we need to pick and choose our bets. So now that I've said that, Brady, do you have a bet on this fight?
I do have a bet on this fight, actually. Yeah, I did bet Yazong Hu at +140. I mean, the line just makes no sense to me. You take a look at it now. There actually is some money coming on Yazong Hu, and rightfully so. We now see Yazong Hu at +115. Amadowski at -135. Yeah, I pulled the trigger at +140. I mean, there's a lot of question marks with this fight. Amadowski is very bad, as is Hu. But, Hu is very young. We see it time and time again. These young guys come in, they look like crap. They take a couple of years off. And they come back and they get wins. Jarvis Danyo comes to mind. That Nikolai Negamarianu guy comes to mind against Kmart. Claudio Puelas comes to mind as well. These young guys take years off and they come back looking improved. And, Hu is at a very good camp in Tiger Muay Thai. We have not seen him fight for nearly 3 years. And I think the last time he fought was 23 years old. So you got to expect he's going to make some improvements. I mean, he can't get any worse, can he? So I did pull the trigger at plus 140. I mean, I think there's some value there. I think this should be a pick 'em, maybe even a slight favorite to who, just based off of, maybe there is some improvements in that 3-year layoff. But yeah, I did line this a pick 'em myself, so I did take the plus 140. It's a tough fight to call. It's a very tough fight to call, but I think who has more ways to win. You mentioned it, Amadowski definitely can be controlled. Who is going to be the much bigger fighter? He's the guy that's fought at heavyweight. He's fought at light heavyweight. This is at middleweight. And I saw some pictures on Twitter, and this guy looks jacked, man. This guy looks huge. So if he does fight smart, clinch up Amadowski, control him, possibly take him down, I think he can have a lot of success. And I saw in the Coulter fight, went back and watched that. He got hurt bad in that first round, but man, this guy has an absolute brick for a head. He got hurt and he recovered right away, and he was eating punches. You mentioned it. He has like a 38, 39% strike in defense. He has a chin on him, so I don't know if Amadowski could knock him out. If Amadowski does win, I do think it's going to be by knockout, but man, Zhuang has a brick for a head. So I do like Zhuang. 1-800 Gambler is definitely up there, but I did take the plus 140 shot on the dog. Another way to kind of look at this, you mentioned it, 100% finish rate between the two. If Amadowski wins, I definitely think it's going to be a knockout. You could say the same thing for Hugh. You take a look at the fight, doesn't go to decision, minus 205. It's not horrible, but maybe look at the alternative under, which is open on one book right now that I do not have access to, but the under 2.5 rounds, minus 155. It's not horrible. Do you have a preference on the over under here, Weezy?
Under is a great bet for this fight because, I mean, Amadowski, his 8 wins are all by knockout. And if I'm not mistaken, he might be like an Abdul Razak Al Hassan type where, 7 or 8 of those wins might have all been in the first round. So I think he's only had one fight go to decision in his entire career, and that was against Jotko, who does have a very sticky game plan. He'll plant you up against the cage. He'll take you down. He took down Amadowski 4 times. So you could see that game plan from Zhuang, but I really do believe that someone's getting knocked out here. So if I was going to play this game, this fight, it would probably just be the under, and the under 2.5 would probably be better than the fight doesn't go to decision. But as far as the money lines, I'm just not touching this simply because we haven't seen both of these guys in so long. It's so hard to know what they're going to look like this time around.
Yeah, 100%. Lots of question marks, but I'd rather be on the plus 140 than say the minus 170, minus 180 on Amadowski. The Gaming Wolf brings it up. Alan Amadowski's 9K on DraftKings, and Hugh is like 7.2K. We'll talk about DK on Tuesday, but yeah, I think Hugh has some serious value on DK as well. All right, so enough of that. I'll bring down the 1-800 Gambler down because we have a better fight to break down. 2 more better guys, but even then, like Rivera has not been all that impressive. 0-3 in the UFC, arguably lost his Contender Series fight as well. And then you have Zhalgas, who is 0-2 in the UFC as well. So yeah, man, 2 more guys that do not have UFC wins. So another fight that's a little bit iffy. But we do have Zhumagulov, who is 32 years old. He has 5'4", 66-inch reach. Going against Jerome Rivera, 26 years old, 5'10", 72-inch reach. And I think the tail of the tape is something to really consider here. Zhalgas is going to be 6 years older. Rivera's the younger fighter. Zhumagulov is going to have a 6-inch height disadvantage and also a 6-inch reach disadvantage. So that's, something to really take a look at there because those are some, big differences. And then we take a look at the last couple fights. Zhalgas did lose to, Whirling Paiva in a fight that I really thought he did win, a very close fight, but they did give it to Paiva. And then he lost to Amir Albazi, a fighter that I'm decently high on, good fighter there. As far as Rivera, he beat Luis Rodriguez on the Contender Series in a fight that, like I said, was very close. Tyson Nam knocked him out. Francisco Figueiredo, the bad Figueiredo, took him to decision, lost that. And then Ode Osborne knocked him out. I think it was like the very first or second punch that he landed. So, again, another interesting fight here. Uncle Weezy, let's get into some numbers on this one.
Yeah, pro fights 18 for Zhumagulov, 15 for Rivera. But even though Zhumagulov has got only 3 more fights than Rivera, he's got almost twice as much time in the cage. So this guy is definitely a decisionator. He definitely goes to decision quite a bit, even though he does have a 54% overall finish rate. Everything else does usually go to decision. And he has had a couple of 25-minute fights, if I'm not mistaken, prior to being in the UFC. But his UFC fights have been super close. I mean, you can look at the striking numbers for Zhumagulov in particular and see that he hasn't really been outstruck by his opponents. He's got 3 takedowns. His opponents only have 2. His opponents have a little more control time than him, but both of his fights have been very close. While Rivera, he's been finished in 2 out of his 3 losses. The only one he made the distance was against the debuting Figueiredo. So, Jerome Rivera is a guy who uses his submission game in order to finish fights. He's never finished a fight by knockout. So Rivera, 70% sub rate. Zhumagulov only has an 8% sub rate and a 46% knockout rate. So we do see that we could maybe call this a striker versus grappler matchup. But the interesting thing is that in 2 UFC fights, Zhumagulov actually has attempted 14 takedowns. So the guy is clearly trying to get fights to the ground here. And I find that interesting because Rivera wants to fight on the ground. He's a great grappler. Jerome Rivera, in his own right, has shot 10 takedowns in the UFC, but he hasn't gotten any of them. So it's going to be an interesting stylistic matchup because Zhumagulov might be better off keeping this fight on the feet. But if you watch tape on Zhumagulov, he looks to usually be trying to get the fight to the ground. It seems like he's more comfortable on the ground than he is on the feet. So I find this to be a really strange clash of styles. In my opinion, and in my metrics opinion, Zhumagulov is the guy who has faced the tougher competition over the course of his career. He's beat better guys. He's got the better record. He's more experienced. But what's interesting about Rivera is that in his 5 losses, he's been finished in 4 of them. So we might even see a finish in this fight, which is rare for Zhumagulov fights in the UFC, especially. Both of them have went to decision, but not a lot of meat on the bone because only 2 fights for Zhumagulov, but he does have a 58% striking defense. He does go to the takedowns a lot. Jerome Rivera has been taken down 6 times out of 10 attempts, so he's only showing 40% takedown defense. Zhumagulov has been taken down 2 out of the 3 times that his opponents have shot takedowns. So both of these guys have under 50% takedown defense. So you're probably going to see this fight hit the ground. And if it does, I think Rivera might actually be kind of live. That being said, man, I don't think I'm touching this one. I just don't know enough about Rivera. I think it's a decent stylistic matchup for Rivera. But Zhumagulov just seems a little more defensively sound and a little more well-rounded. I don't know what you're thinking on this one, but I'm thinking stay away.
Yeah, I'm definitely thinking stay away, especially if you take a look at the line. Zhumagulov is the second biggest favorite on the card, minus 358. Jerome Rivera plus 283. And I'll be honest, prior to getting into the tape and looking at the numbers, I was thinking maybe Zalgas is a potential parlay piece because I remember, man, Rivera is so bad. But after digging into it, I recommend 120% just staying away. And I will actually throw up that 1-800-GAMBLER because I would not parlay Zalgas at nearly minus 400 because Rivera is going to have opportunities. You take a look at the tail of the tape, that scares me off right away. Rivera is going to have a ton of advantages with the height, with the reach. The younger fighter, we're going to see improvements from him. And then, like you mentioned it, Zalgas is somebody that wants to get this down to the mat. And I think it can. I think it will. But that's where Rivera is most comfortable. So this is a pass if you've ever seen one, especially at minus 400. If you're looking to bet it, maybe Zalgas by decision. But like you mentioned, Rivera has been finished in 4 of his 5. So again, that scares me as well. So I'm not looking at any props. Not throwing Zalgas into my parlay. I'd be very careful about that line. But at the end of the day, I do think Zalgas is the much, 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 much better fighter. It's just he does have some things going against him. He's going to have to close the distance, get on the inside, take him down, stay on top, stay safe. And I do think he does that. But do I think he should be minus 400? Absolutely not. So the recommendation for me is going to be pass. You will not see me parlaying Zalgas and Zhumagulov this week, and I actually don't have any parlays at all this week. So we'll take a look at the next fight. There we go. Finally, some guys that have some wins in the UFC. So we're back to normal here. Can't believe those 2 fights are on UFC 264, but it is what it is. We have Omari Akhmedov, who is 33 years old, 6 foot, 73-inch reach, going against Brad Tavares, 33 years old, 6'1", 74-inch reach. Take a look at the last couple fights. Akhmedov did submit Tom Breeze, very good win there. Lost a decision to Chris Weidman. Beat Ian Heinisch by decision, beat Zach Cummings by decision, and beat Tim Boach by decision as well. So 4-1 in his last 5 fights. And we take a look at Brad Tavares. Did beat Antonio Carlos Jr. by decision. He lost to Edmund Shabazian by knockout, lost to Israel Adesanya by decision. No shame in those 2 losses. And then he knocked out Krzysztof Jotko, and then he took a latest to decision and won it there. So yeah, interesting fight here. I think it's a very interesting stylistic matchup, and I think the stats will tell a lot in this fight. So what do you got, Weezy, for this one?
You know, what's really interesting, and I'm just going to start with the last 5 that you just went after. If you look at the last 3 victories for Tavares, Antonio Carlos Jr., Krzysztof Jotko, and Leitis, all those guys are grapplers first. And that's how I've seen Akhmedov win fights in the UFC as well. Akhmedov is absolutely at his best when he's mixing in takedowns and top control and ground and pound. But you know, one of the stats that we're going to look at here, which is on the screen, is that 79.55% takedown defense for Tavares, and that's why you see those wins against guys like Carlos Jr., Jotko, and Leitis, guys with grappling heavy game plans, because Tavares has such a good takedown defense. He successfully defended 70 takedowns in his UFC career. His opponents have only been successful on 18 out of 88 takedowns against. So I think that's why we see this line as wide as it is because, you know, people who have watched Akhmedov win, they've watched him use his wrestling when he wins. And he is a great wrestler, but he's going to have his hands full trying to take down Tavares. So now that I touched on that, let's just go through the numbers here. Both of these guys very experienced, 27 and 24 total fights. Both of these guys with about 75% winning percentages. Both of these guys over 225 minutes of cage time and below 300. Both of these guys with an over 10-year UFC mixed martial arts career at 11 and a half years for Akhmedov and 14 years for Tavares. So Tavares has been fighting since he was 19 and Akhmedov since he was 22. If we look at the finish numbers, Akhmedov, an equal opportunity finisher at 29% by sub, 33% by knockout, while Tavares, 28% by knockout, 11% by sub. So actually, Tavares in his career, less than a 40% finish rate, and in his UFC career, only a 15% finish rate, while we see Akhmedov in his UFC career, a 33% overall finish rate, and overall, we're talking 62%. So even though these guys are middleweights, we usually see a little bit better finish numbers than that. And if we talk about how they get finished, Omari Akhmedov a lot more likely to be finished, as he has been finished in 4 out of his 5 pro losses, 2 by sub, 2 by knockout, while Brad Tavares in his 6 losses has lost 3 of them by knockout. But it's important to note that Tavares' last 2 losses came to Shabazian and Adesanya, who are strikers first, and his last 3 victories have come against grapplers. So I think that the numbers are kind of looking that Tavares has probably got an advantage here. I know we see it in the line. A 35% striking accuracy for Akhmedov, 41% for Tavares. Both of these guys land more significant strikes than they absorb. Both of these guys have a striking defense right around 57%. Neither one of these guys is showing great power from the feet at less than 0.2 knockdowns per 15 minutes. And both of these guys are getting knocked down, but they're definitely not what you would call chinny either. So the striking statistics pretty even. Tavares a little bit better on accuracy. The defensive numbers very similar. Tavares being a little more chinny than Akhmedov. And then if we look at the grappling stats, I think this is really where the fight is going to be won and lost. Akhmedov with a stellar 49.15% takedown percentage. He's gotten 29 of 59 takedowns, while Tavares has only gotten 27% of his takedown attempts. But I don't really see him being the one to try to take people down. So what we're looking at here is that 29 out of 59 for Akhmedov for 49%, against the 70 out of 88 successful takedowns defended for 80% for Tavares. That's where the fight's going to be won and lost. Because if Akhmedov unsuccessfully tries to take down Tavares for the first 2 rounds, he is going to absolutely gas out, and Tavares is going to put him on him in the 3rd. And he might even finish it in the 3rd. But if Akhmedov can get that top control, he can get a takedown in each of the first 2 rounds, he could probably win a decision here. So, you know, I guess it really just depends on what you think the game plans for these guys is going to be and how they're going to execute those game plans and whether they'll be successful. The strength to schedule numbers are showing a very, very similar story here. So I'm really not even going to get into it. These guys have both fought high-level competition. They're both beating high-level competition as well, and they've both been in the UFC for a very long time. So this is a very well-matched. This is great matchmaking here. I really do see Tavares getting the win because I think it's going to be very difficult for Akhmedov to take him down and hold him down.
Yeah, I'm with you. I mean, the stats tell it all. Man, Tavares' takedown defense in his last fight against Junior, it looked the best it's ever had. It was phenomenal. Junior was able to get him down once, and then he did stuff 11 of those takedowns. But again, that is Carlos Jr. This is Amari Akhmedov. Akhmedov is definitely the better wrestler, but still, like in general, his takedown defense is very good. So I think we talk about it, week after week. Going for takedowns and not getting them is going to be really tough on your gas tank. And we talk about, some of the most well-conditioned guys, if they do go for takedowns and they are unsuccessful, what's really taxing on the gas tank. But we have Akhmedov, who is a gasser in general. So if Tavares is able to stuff these takedowns, if he does get taken down, is able to work his way back up, Akhmedov is going to gas out. He's probably going to gas out, within the round and a half mark. Second round, late second round, especially if Tavares is, stuffing takedowns. I think the first round is going to be very competitive. I think Amari, might even take him down here and there. But I think as the fight goes on, it's just going to wear on him. He's going to slow down. He's going to gas out. And I think Tavares does win those second two. But yeah, the line, I think it could be a little bit. It could. I think as the fight goes on. My bad. I think it could be a little bit wide, but we'll take a look at it here. We have Tavares. Money's actually coming in on Akhmedov. Opening up -190, currently -158. We have Akhmedov opening up +165, currently +138. So some people might think that maybe there is a value on Akhmedov, and I kind of agree to an extent. But I do think it will play out a little bit closer to that line than the line does indicate. But I'll go with Tavares. Two stuff the takedowns as the fight goes on. Akhmedov does slow down. Somebody threw it out in the chat. Fight goes to distance could be something to look at. -200. Not horrible. Tavares by decision is +160. That's not horrible as well. Do you have a preference on the over/under for this fight?
We mentioned it. Tavares not much of a finisher. And it's surprising because the guy throws heavy leather, and and Akhmedov's no joke on the feet either. So I'm not touching this because we talked about the really taxing game plan that Akhmedov's going to have to try to take down Tavares here, and if he's unable to do it, I could see Tavares finishing him in the third. So God, it's. I don't think I'm going to touch the over/under here. I can definitely see why people are going to take the dog shot on Akhmedov because he's a good, well-rounded mixed martial artist. I just think that he's at his best when he's taking people down. And man, that, like you said, he looked so good against Antonio Carlos Jr. with his takedown defense. Carlos Jr. was getting in deep on a lot of those double leg attempts, and Tavares just stopped pretty much every one of them. The one that he did get taken down on, he was on the mat less than 5 seconds. He got right back up. So I could even see this fight finishing in the third. If you bet Tavares by decision, you might want to, let's say you put 1 unit on it, maybe put 1/10 of a unit on the third round knockout prop. Might be 10-1.
Yeah, I agree. Akhmedov has been knocked out twice, and he does gas out pretty bad. And if Tavares is fresh in that third, like you said, he does hit pretty hard. So, yeah, I can see a third round stoppage for Tavares. But I think more likely decision. But, yeah, third round is definitely something to consider. For me personally, no bet on this fight. I want really nothing to do with it, to be honest. But we'll get to the next fight here. And we have, oh, my goodness, another fight I really want nothing to do with. Jennifer Maia going against Jessica Ai. We have Maia, who is 32 years old, 5'4", 64-inch reach, going against Jessica Ai, 34 years old, 5'6", 66-inch reach. We'll take a look at the last couple fights between the two. Maia did lose a decision to Valentina Shevchenko. Losing by decision to her, it's not a bad thing. She did even take a round. She won a round against Valentina, which is probably why we see the line where it's at. And then she did submit Joanne Calderwood. I remember being really high on Calderwood on that fight. That sucked. She lost a decision to Caitlin Chukagian. She beat Roxanne Modafferi, and she beat Alexis Davis. So 3-2 in her last 5 fights is Jennifer Maia. And then as far as Jessica Eye, she did lose a decision to Joanne Calderwood. She lost a decision to Cynthia Calvillo. She beat Vivian Araujo by decision. She got knocked out by Valentina Shevchenko, and then she won a split decision over Kayla Chukagian. So, yeah, interesting fight. Weezy, kind of interested to hear the stats on this one. What do you got for us?
You know, I mean, I'm looking at the experience numbers here, and they're almost identical. You know, 26 fights, 25 pro fights, 317 minutes of cage time for Maia, 315 for Eye. You know, average fight time, both, you know, between 12 and 13 minutes. The career length, 11 years for both of them. Eye's been fighting a higher percentage of her career at the highest level, though, 14 fights. But then again, 5-8 with the no contest in there. Compared to Jennifer Maia, who's 3-3. Maia's done a good job of winning fights that she's supposed to win. And she got that surprise submission off her back against Calderwood, and that's the second time that's happened to Calderwood, where she's gotten snatched up in an armbar from guard. You know, both of these girls are pretty low volume, too. I know if I were to look at my DraftKings stats, I think they score about 2 DraftKings points per minute. You know, if you look at the striking accuracy, 39% for Maia, 37% for Eye. Both girls, Maia and Eye, absorb more strikes than they land. Both girls don't have a knockdown. Jessica Eye has been knocked down, but I believe that was from a vicious head kick by Valentina Shevchenko, so no shame in that. She's obviously very tough. If we look at the grappling stats, you know, I think one area where Maia would have the advantage is in the grappling, but 6 UFC fights and only 4 takedown attempts for Jennifer Maia, which is weird, you know, because she's fought some good grapplers and, you know, Shevchenko and Modafferi and Alexis Davis. But she doesn't shoot for a lot of takedowns. She got 2 of the 4 that she's taken down. She averages 0.34 per 15 minutes, gets about 20% control time over her opponents. And Eye averages about 1 takedown attempt per fight. She gets 40% of her takedown attempts, 0.45 per 15 minutes. She gets controlled about 11% of the time, gets controlled 22% of the time, while Maia is also getting out-controlled by her opponents at about a 10% rate as well. Both these ladies get taken down. Eye has been taken down 1.34 times per 15 minutes, and it's been 1.68 for Maia. Both of these girls' takedown defense is not spectacular. They're both below 60% takedown defense. So maybe if Maia does want to go to the wrestling against Eye, she could do it. There could be that path there, but we haven't seen much of it out of her, so we can't really count on it. And when we look at the strength of schedule stats, we see that the ratio is about the same for both of them. Jennifer Maia fighting the more experienced competition than Jessica Eye. The wins are much better for Jessica Eye, even though she's fighting less experienced opponents, at a 2.22 ratio for Eye, 1.2 for Maia in her wins. So the average woman that Maia is beating has a record of 6-5, and the average woman that Eye is beating has a record of 4 and 1.8. And when we look at the losses, Jennifer Maia's losses are better than Jessica Eye's at a 1.91 ratio for Maia, 1.33 for Eye, and slightly more experienced opponents that Maia is losing to. I'm not betting this fight. It does look pretty close just about everywhere. I guess it depends on which one of these girls wants to grapple. I think if it stays standing, I could maybe see this being a 50-50 fight. I think if we mix the martial arts, you know, maybe we see Maia winning this fight 60 to 70% of the time. That being said, I don't have a strong read either way. I don't know how you feel about it.
Yeah, I mean, I think the line's like really inflated. I mean, like you mentioned, this seems like a close fight. Maia minus 205, Jessica Eye plus 175. I think it's inflated because, like I mentioned, I mean, she took down Valentina, which is very impressive. Don't get me wrong. She won a round as well. But you take a look at those takedown attempts, and that's extremely concerning to me because if I was to bet on Jennifer Maia, I would want her to take down Jessica Eye, exploit that 57% takedown defense. But you see it right there in 6 UFC fights. Only 4 takedowns attempted, only 2 landed, 1 against Valentina, but it's just hard to trust her, man. I mean, if I knew for a fact that she would come in here, you know, she'd constantly go for takedowns, maybe I would, you know, take a shot on Maia minus 200, but just taking a look at those takedown numbers, that scares the crap out of me at especially a minus 200 price tag. So if it does play outstanding for 15 minutes, man, this is a coin flip. It can go either way. Jessica even has more volume as well, so that's terrifying. So this is a big pass for me. I'm going to pick Maya because I think, like, hey, she probably should go for takedowns. I think if she was really smart, she'd go for takedowns. If she has a good game plan, she wins this fight. It's just we have not seen those takedown numbers that I really do want to see to lay minus 200. So, yeah, I think this fight is going to play out close. But, yeah, Maya, it would be best for her to go for those takedowns here. So, as far as, like, the odds, like, this is unbettable for me, especially the minus 205. No interest there. Even Maya by decision, which is plus 110, I don't have much interest. Fight goes the distance, minus 260, there's just no point. So, from a betting perspective, any of the lines sticking out to you, Weezy, or it's a straight pass for you?
Yeah, this 1-800-GAMBLER is the only line that I'd be calling if I thought about this fight, betting it. I just, I don't see it. We've gotten past these 4 fights. I think for the rest of the show now, we'd like to thank everybody that stuck with us for this long. But now we're going to get into some fights where we really got some meat on the bone and we can really find some angles here. I think this is where we're going to make our gravy from the rest of the card on right now.
I agree, man. Interesting 4 fights. I think that, some of them will be exciting. I actually think, as much as we crapped on the first fight, I think it will be somewhat entertaining in a very hilarious, funny way. But I'm kind of looking forward to it. Maybe I'm just a freak, but I'm kind of looking forward to that one. I do want to pause and say, if you guys can like the video, if you are here watching, or if you're watching in the future, please leave a like. Like I said, you guys killed it on the video last week. Over 200 likes. If we can hit over 200 this week, again, that'd be sweet. But yeah, I say we get into this next fight here, and we have a good one, a good fight, a very good fight. I'm looking forward to this fight. I think it's one of the best. I want to say it's like the second or third best, at least in my opinion, on the prelims. And we have Trevin Giles going against Dricus du Plessis. We have Giles, who is 28 years old, 6 foot, 74-inch reach. Dricus is 27 years old, 6'1", 76-inch reach. We'll take a look at their last couple fights. Dricus only one fight in the UFC, did knock out Marcus Perez. I think he was like one of the only people that knocked out Marcus Perez. I think Marcus Perez only has like 1 or 2 maybe knockout losses. So that was kind of impressive to me. And you take a look at Trevin Giles. He did beat Roman Dolidze in a decision win. I know a lot of people thought that Roman did win that fight. I went back and watched it. I thought Giles clearly won that fight. You take a look at the fight before that. It beat Bevon Lewis, knocked him out. A split decision over James Krause in a fight that I actually scored it for Krause. The fight was very, very close. Krause stepped in on a day's notice up a weight class. So that wasn't a good look to me. Prior to that, got submitted by Gerald Meerschaert in a fight where horrible fight IQ in a fight where all he had to do is keep it standing. He easily wins, but no, he was messing around on the ground with Meerschaert. Prior to that, got knocked down by Zach Cummings and ultimately submitted in that 3rd round. So yeah, interesting fight. I think there will be some violence, especially when we get into the stats. But yeah, curious to hear this one, Weezy.
Stats on this one really do scream violence. So let's get right to that. Let's look at the finish stats. Dricus du Plessis, of his 15 wins, 60% by sub, 40% by KO. That means a 100% finish rate. Dricus du Plessis, 2 losses, 1 by sub, 1 by knockout, 100% finish rate against. And then we go to the Giles side, 14 professional wins, 36% by submission, 43% by KO. Both of these guys are equal opportunity finishers. I think we think of Giles and du Plessis as kind of like kickboxers, but both of these guys got a ton of submissions on their record as well. And then if you look at Trevin Giles and his 2 professional losses, 100% finish rate. So, I guess if we're looking here, so we got 17 fights for Giles or du Plessis, 16 for Giles. All 17 of du Plessis have ended inside the distance, and only 2 of Giles hasn't. So we're talking 31 of 33 combined fights for these guys have finished inside the distance. Man, that screams violence. That screams under. That's what I'm betting on this fight. If we just talk about the technical aspects of these guys a little bit, as I mentioned, they're both, Giles is a good boxer, really good with his hands. Du Plessis is a good kickboxer. But they both have got sneaky ground games as well. And I think it kind of just showed the fact that Giles was so willing to grapple with Meerschaert. I mean, it wound up being a huge mistake, but The fact that he was even willing to grapple with that dude who is a killer on the ground shows how confident he is in his ground game. The one thing that I think is really going to stick out here, if we look at all the stats for these guys, because we don't have much in terms of Duplessis. One fight and it lasted 1 round, and not even 1 round. He's got 3.37 minutes of cage time here. But, you know, they're both pretty diverse, you know, so it just depends on who you think the better kickboxer is, who you think the better wrestler is. Trevin Giles has gotten 8 of the 10 takedowns that he's attempted in the UFC. So that is something very encouraging to see. Only 7 UFC fights, but he has attempted 10 and gotten 8. So he's averaging 1.37 takedowns per 15 minutes, and he's controlled his opponents about 21% of the time. Duplessis hasn't shot a takedown and hasn't had a takedown shot against him. He doesn't have the greatest takedown defense if you look at his pre-UFC tape. He has been submitted by Gerald Soldier Boy McLennan, was it? Or I forget what that dude's name, but he was in the UFC for a while. He's one of the only other South Africans to make it to the UFC, along with Ruin Potts, and neither one of those guys had stellar records. And I think a lot of people are kind of just putting Duplessis in that category because he comes from such a small mixed martial arts scene down there in South Africa. But this guy Duplessis, he's been fighting since he was 18. He had a 4-0 record when he lost to Soldier Boy, and he got submitted by a guillotine choke there in the 3rd round. But this guy's got some skills. He is pretty good all around, but so is Giles. So, you know, we're looking at 2 guys who are pretty experienced, 2 guys who are very young and 28 and 27 years old. It's really hard to find a glaring advantage for either guy until you go to the strength of schedule, because you see that Trevin Giles has 7 UFC fights while Duplessis only has 1. So right there, we know it's a much higher level of competition that Giles has faced. We don't know enough about Duplessis here. I'm going to lean Giles, but I think the bet that I'm going to make, I'm not even thinking about it, I'm definitely betting the fight doesn't go to decision as soon as that comes out and it becomes available on my book. You talk about Duplessis with a 100% finish rate, Giles with a almost damn near 100% finish rate for and against. Like I mentioned, 31 of 33 combined fights for these guys, ending inside the distance. I'm not going to overthink it. That's where I'm going with this one.
Yeah, it's one of those fights where both guys have never lost by decision. If you guys know me, you guys know I love taking shots on the fight doesn't go when neither guy has ever lost by decision. So I'd be kind of careful about the under in the spot. I think I'd take the fight doesn't go instead, because Giles has been finished in the 3rd round in both of his losses. Once against Mearshart in the third round, once against Cummings in the 3rd round. So I'd be kind of scared about that. And then you take a look at Duplessis. He was knocked out in the 3rd round, and he was also submitted in the 3rd round. So both of these guys have actually lost all their fights in the 3rd round. So as far as like the under or the fight doesn't go, I'd probably lean with that doesn't go to get that extra 2.5 minutes. I don't know. You might need it. So we'll take a look at the odds here, and we have Duplessis as the favorite, -120, and then Giles at +100. I'm with you. I don't care who wins this fight. I don't care. I'm taking the fight doesn't go. We'll take a look at the odds for that right now. It's not terrible. -135 for the fight doesn't go to decision. The under 2.5 is -105. It's tempting, but like I said, I'm kind of iffy because both guys have lost all their fights in the 3rd round. So as far as a pick, I'll go Giles because I think he's the better fighter, but it's hard to deny how dangerous Dricus is. I think both guys are live for a knockout. I think both guys are live for a submission. So it's just one of those fights where neither guy has ever lost by decision. And I think, Dricus is going to bring the volume, and it's going to make Giles engage a little bit more. I don't really like how low volume Giles is, but with Dricus coming forward like a madman, I think Giles is going to have many opportunities to counter him if this does get down to the mat. And either way, I do think both are live for a sub there. But I'm rooting for violence here as well with you. Any other final thoughts on this fight? I think you're muted, Weezy.
All right, now Giles 3.26 significant strikes landed per minute, only 1.88 absorbed. So yeah, super low volume, but he's out ratioing his opponents at a very impressive rate. And then you look at, like you mentioned, 17.23 significant strikes attempted per minute by Duplessis. But of course, that was in the first 3 minutes of the fight. So we're going to be higher volume then. So yeah, volume advantage for Duplessis, definitely an accuracy and a defensive advantage though for Giles. But yeah, let's just go, not overthink it. Let's bet violence. It's screaming violence. Let's just bet it.
Yep. I agree. But yeah, we'll get to the next fight here, which is a very good one, a fight that I'm really looking forward to. I know a lot of people out there are looking forward to this as well. Ilia Topuria, somebody who I'm very, very high on him. I remember he came into his UFC debut against Yusuf Zalal, bet him as an underdog in that spot, which is, crazy to think about. Right now, because Zalal, I believe he's got cut from the UFC, if I'm not mistaken, and we have Topuria, who is a legit prospect. But going against Ryan Hall, who a lot of people are high on as well, a guy that's not really active. He is 36 years old, 5'10", has a 70-inch reach. Topuria, who is 24 years old, 12 years younger, 5'7", 3-inch height disadvantage, and then a 69-inch reach, a 1-inch reach disadvantage. So we'll take a look at the last couple fights between the two. Ryan Hall did take Lobov to decision, beat him there. He did take Maynard to decision as well, Gray Maynard, and then he beat BJ Penn by submission, and then he took Elkins to decision as well, beat him there. He did knock down Darren Elkins 2 times in that fight as well, looked very good, but we have not seen him in, I think, nearly 2 years. And then we take a look at Ilia Topuria, made his UFC debut, like I mentioned, against Zalal, won by decision. That was his very first decision win. Prior to that, I think he went to the 3rd round maybe once, but that was the first time he ever went to the scorecards and was able to get it done. There were a lot of question marks if the fight did get extended, and I think he answered a lot of those, but he did slow down in that 3rd round. But you take a look at the fight, and how could you not slow down? That was a serious pace in that fight. And then he knocked out Damon Jackson, which was awesome because I was very high on him there as well. Very interested to hear your thoughts on this matchup, Weezy, and get into the stats for this one.
Stats might be a little bit misleading here because Ryan Hall is just kind of like, he's a specialist, right? He's a jiu-jitsu specialist and he fights very smart. There's some really weird, the way that Hall fights is just completely unique. He throws a ton of kicks from the outside. He isn't afraid to fall down when he throws kicks because he doesn't mind being on his back. He's constantly rolling for Imanari rolls and leg locks. For a jiu-jitsu specialist in his 4 fights, he's only gotten 1 takedown. So, you can already see that he's not the traditional jiu-jitsu player that's trying to take his guy down and then attack from the top position. He's almost more comfortable being in the 50-50 or being on the bottom. I saw in the Elkins fight a couple of times he got on top of him and immediately rolled to his back and rolled Elkins on top of him so that he could start attacking submissions from his back. Ryan Hall is an enigma, a very, very, very intelligent fighter who fights to his strengths. You can see in all of his UFC fights how frustrated his opponents are with his game plan. And I hate betting against guys like that. But what I hate even more is betting against guys like Ilia Topuria, this guy looks like an absolute killer. When this guy came into the UFC and he had that fight against Zalal, let's remember that when he took that fight against Zalal had 3 wins in the UFC that he had stacked like flapjacks back to back. And I remember doing the tape on that fight and watching Topuria and just being absolutely gobsmacked by how badass this guy is. His grappling is killer, and his striking was really ugly in his first few fights. But then one of the knockouts, I think it was the Goncalves fight, he absolutely took this dude's head off in his last fight before he got to the UFC. And his striking looks to have improved by leaps and bounds, and he's only 24 years old, So there's a lot of things that are just kind of telling me to stay away from this fight. But let's get into the stats here. Ilia Topuria, 10 fights, 9 of them have been finished inside the distance. 70% by sub, 20% by KO. Ryan Hall, 38% of his wins have come by submission, 25% by KO. Neither one of these guys has ever been finished, as they only have 1 loss between the 2 of them anyway. If you look at Ryan Hall's striking stats, he only lands 2.32 significant strikes per minute, but he only absorbs 0.96. I mean, if this guy fights for 15 minutes, 0.96 tells you that his opponent will land 14 significant strikes in 15 minutes. So, this is just a weird fight. And in a weird fight, I think I'd rather have the plus money, but this guy Topuria is an absolute killer. I don't know which one of these guys is the better grappler because they're both incredibly credentialed. But Hall is just such a non-traditional grappler that he might be the one that's more likely to catch Topuria by surprise with some kind of a odd Imanari roll or champagne submission attempt, or I don't know what it is, but there's something that's just telling me that as good as Topuria is, I just don't want to bet against Ryan Hall. But there's all these things, Topuria is 12 years younger. He's just as credentialed as a grappler. And, he's never been taken down in the UFC either. His opponents are 0 for 2 in their takedown attempts against him. It's just a very strange stylistic matchup. Look at this. Topuria, 69% striking defense. Ryan Hall, 75% striking defense. I don't know, man. The stats don't really tell the tale here, in my opinion. It's just a very, very strange stylistic matchup. I don't know. I don't know what to say, man. I'm actually kind of perplexed by these stats. You got to help me out, dude. What do you got for me?
Yeah, so believe it or not, prior to getting into research, I was actually going to parlay Topuria in Zalgas, and I came away from the tape thinking, I'm not parlaying either of these guys. I know a lot of people think that, Topuria is going to walk through Hall, but, I think Hall, is a very underrated striker. You mentioned the stat numbers there. People are bringing up the competition, and yeah, for sure you can, because this is going to be the best fighter that Ryan Hall has fought for sure. It's just he's very tricky. I think his striking is underrated. Obviously, a very good ground game. This is going to be the best grappler that Topuria has fought in his career, and although Topuria is a black belt, I don't know how much I would mess around with Ryan Hall on the mat. But yeah, I'm going Topuria here. I think he does win. I don't know if he wins by finish. I think a lot of people are expecting Topuria to come out here and starch Ryan Hall. Ryan Hall has never been knocked out. You take a look at the stats. Topuria has only 2 knockout wins, one of them over Damon Jackson. So I don't know if he knocks out Ryan Hall, especially how good Ryan Hall is at, staying at range. I think he's going to, like you said, a lot of Imanari rolls, a lot of, pulling guard, a lot of him, staying on the back. I think this fight could get extended. I'm actually taking Topuria by decision. Would I be shocked if he knocked him out? Not at all. But I'd be kind of shocked if he did submit Ryan Hall. That would be a huge feather in his cap there. But we'll take a look at the odds here. And Topuria is a pretty big favorite. It looks like a little bit of money is coming in on the Ryan Hall side. Topuria is minus 230. Ryan Hall plus 195. You take a look at the fight doesn't go to decision, minus 165. The fight goes to decision, plus 135. The under 2.5 rounds is minus 127. I think the under is going to be a very popular play. I get it. Topuria has only been to decision once, but I'm just not sure that he knocks out Ryan Hall, and I'm pretty sure he doesn't submit Ryan Hall. So do you have a lean on the over under in this fight?
Yeah, I think I'd probably go over. I mean, so both these guys great grapplers, right? So we think that, maybe neither one of them gets submitted because they are top level grapplers. But how do you get knocked out when Ryan Hall is absorbing less than 1 significant strike per minute, and Ilia Topuria, he's absorbing less than 2 significant strikes per minute? So I think that's one thing that the numbers can tell us is that, yeah, either one of these guys can pull a submission out of their ass, and if Topuria really does pressure Hall, get inside, he can land some big shots that can knock Hall out. But if you put a gun to my head and said, take the fight doesn't go to decision or the fight goes to decision, I would say the fight goes to decision because I think they're both good enough grapplers to not get submitted by the other one. And neither one of these guys lands really enough strikes in order to maybe knock the other one out. I was really surprised to see that in Ryan Hall's 111 strikes landed, he's actually got 2 knockdowns. Yeah. You don't think of Ryan Hall as somebody with any power, but the reason he has knockdowns is he is so unafraid of being taken down or being on his back that he's just willing to throw crazy spinning shit from outside. And if it lands, you're going down. So it's just a weird fight, man. But yeah, I would probably bet that it goes to decision. And if you made me bet the money line, I'd probably just take the plus money on Hall because I'm not confident in any of these favorites this week. I've been looking for money line favorites to bet for the last 8 days. I'm coming up with nothing.
Yeah, I'm not touching the minus 230 on Topuria. I'll bet on him in the future, but this matchup just feel a little bit iffy on it. I'm gonna pick him to win. I'm gonna pick him to win by decision by landing the more strikes. Getting on top and staying safe, but it's gonna be a dangerous game going to the ground with Ryan Hall. And I do think Ryan Hall striking and is underrated for sure. So I'll take Topuria to win. But a little bit iffy on it as far as the fight doesn't go where the fight goes. No bet for me there as well. If a gun to my head, I'll take the over. But again, not much confidence there as well. So good fight though. Good fight. Very good fight. I'm looking forward to see Ryan Hall back, and I'm looking forward to Topuria. Did you have something to say, Weezy?
Yeah. One of the guys asked in the chat, "What's Topuria by submission?" It's plus 460 right now on FanDuel. I just wanted to answer that question.
Yeah, plus I don't know, plus 460. I don't know. I'd be shocked. I'd be shocked if he subbed Ryan Hall, but maybe he does it. All right, so we'll get to the next fight here. We have a very good fight. This is my favorite fight on the prelims. Niko Price, being one of my favorite fighters, was able to meet him in Miami actually over the over like closer to Christmas. Got a picture with him. Me and him actually, he tried to take me down. It was pretty funny, but he's a funny guy. He's a very funny guy. He kind of acts the same way in the cage as he does in person. The dude's a freaking madman, and we'll talk about why. So Niko Price, 31 years old, 6 foot, 76-inch reach. Michel Pereira, 27 years old, 6'1", 73-inch reach. Speaking of madman, you have Michel Pereira, who is also a madman. He's a showman. He goes in there, he does flips, he does cartwheels, he does dance routines, and it's very fun to watch. But we see as of late, he is kind of stopping those antics a little bit. But if anybody's going to bring those out of him, it's going to be a guy like Niko Price. This fight is going to be fun. I love Niko Price. I love Michel Pereira. Put him together. I think it's going to be fun. I think there's going to be violence, and I think it's going to be one of the best fights, if not the best fight on the card, in my opinion. So we'll take a look at the last couple fights. We have Niko Price, who got a no contest draw over Donald Cerrone. I believe Niko Price did test positive for marijuana. He did get knocked out against Vicente Luque in what was an absolute war. He did knock out James Vick with that up kick, and then he did lose to Jeff Neal in also what was a war for as long as it lasted by knockout, and then he did knock out Tim Means. I think that was Tim Means' first knockout loss in his entire career. And then we take a look at Michel Pereira, who did make his UFC debut against Danny Roberts. A lot of unknowns about that guy coming in. I was on Roberts. I didn't bet him in that fight, but I did pick Roberts. And I remember thinking, like, man, maybe this guy is the real deal, because I went back and watched the tape on him. I was like, man, this guy is not UFC caliber. But, man, he proved me wrong. He went out there and knocked out Danny Roberts. And then the next fight, when I did pick him, he loses to Tristan Connolly, where he was a huge favorite. I think it was like minus 500, minus 600. Gassed out in like the first couple minutes of the fight. He did like a 10-minute dance routine on his way to the cage. And then after that, he was beating Diego Sanchez very badly. And then I think it was like an illegal knee or something. DQ loss to Diego Sanchez. So interesting, career so far. He does submit Salim Imadaev in that third round, and then he did take Chaos Williams to decision. A lot of people thought that Chaos won that fight. Went back and watched it. I did score it for Michel Pereira myself. So yeah, very good fight here, Weezy. I know you're looking forward to this fight as well as I am. So let's get into the stats for this one.
I did a balls deep breakdown on this fight on my channel because we did the main event and the co-main event on your channel, but this was the fight that really jumped off the page for me. When you look at the statistics here, everything just kind of jumps off the page, and then both of these guys, they passed the eye test as well. They're both spectacular, fun fighters to watch. Price, you just got an all-action guy who literally has no concern for his own health and well-being whatsoever. He will put himself in harm's way. He's a guy who'll take 1, 2, 3 strikes to land one, and he has more faith in his one strike than in your 3. So this fight is just going to be awesome. I'm so fired up for this. But let's get into the numbers, because there's a lot of meat on the bone with these numbers here. So Niko Price, 20 professional fights. Michel Pereira, even though he's 4 years younger than Price, he's got 38 professional fights. Almost twice as much time in the professional cage for Pereira. Both of these guys' average fight time over their careers, a total of 58 fights. The average fight time, if you were to aggregate it out, would be about 4.7 minutes. So these guys, more often than not, their fights finish in the first round. The length of the career has been 9 years for both of them, but Pereira definitely the more active fighter, as he's got 38 fights in 9 years to Niko Price's 20. If you look at the UFC experience, though, 12 UFC fights for Niko Price and only 5 for Pereira. So I always consider the UFC the highest level. So you look at 60% of Niko Price's fights have been taking place in the UFC, while for Pereira it's less than 20%. So, and we do see that Pereira has 11 losses on his record. So he has lost 2 fights in the UFC to Connolly and Sanchez, but prior to that, he had 9 losses. And none of them were in the UFC. So he's losing to some lower level competition here. If we look at the finish stats, Niko Price has finished 100% of his UFC wins, 4 of them by knockout, 2 of them by sub. And in his career, he's got a 92% finish rate. While for Pereira, he's an equal opportunity finisher in the UFC, as he has 1 submission victory, 1 knockout victory, and 1 decision victory. And in his career, he's got 40% of his wins by knockout and 28% of his wins by sub. So both of these guys knock out their opponents more than they sub them, but they both have the ability to get subbed as well. Now, Niko Price, in his 4 UFC losses, has been finished in all 4 of them. And he's been finished in all 4 of his pro losses because they all came in the UFC. 3 of them by knockout, 1 of them by sub. On the other hand, though, Pereira, even though he's got 11 losses, he's only been finished in 2 out of those 11 losses, once by sub, once by knockout. So Pereira's very hard to finish. If we look at the striking stats, Niko Price, a volume monster. In 12 UFC fights, this guy is averaging 13 significant strikes attempted per minute. That is a crazy pace to put on anybody. And then when we look on the other side of Pereira, only 6.86. Now, if we use the eye test, we can see why the numbers would be that way. Because Pereira throws everything into every strike. Everything's flashy, everything's spinning, everything's jumping. It's either a Superman punch, a Showtime kick where he's bouncing off the cages, spinning shit, spinning back fists. This guy throws explosive strikes, so he can't keep up with Price's volume. If he tried to throw that many strikes per minute, he would be gassed out at the end of the first round. So Price definitely going to put the volume on Pereira, but Pereira, when he hits, it absolutely hurts. Both of these guys have a lot of power. Price landing a knockdown on 1.11% of his significant strikes landed, and for Pereira, it's 0.9%. So they're both showing a lot of power, although Niko Price is the one who's chinnier, as he has been knocked down on 0.81% of the significant strikes that he has had landed against him. So Pereira is more accurate on offense, and he's better on defense. So we see Pereira landing 3.74 significant strikes per minute, only absorbing 2.84, while Niko Price is landing way more strikes at 5.33, but he's absorbing 5.83. So Pereira, the better offensive and defensive striker. Both these guys have a lot of power. Price has been the one that's been more likely to be knocked down, but we would look at the competition and see why. Grappling stats. I don't think the grappling is going to tell much of a tale in this fight. I think it's going to be a stand-up war. But Niko Price only has a 22.73% takedown percentage. It's not very good. And we noticed that Michel Pereira has 100% takedown defense. So Niko Price is probably not taking down Michel Pereira. While on the other side, Pereira has a 70% takedown offense. He's attempted 10 takedowns in 5 fights. So he's averaging 2 takedown attempts per fight, but he's getting them at a 70% clip. Very impressive. And Niko Price's takedown defense is also pretty good, over 72%. He's successfully defended 13 of the 18 takedowns against him. They both control their opponents about as much time as they do get controlled. About 20% of Pereira's fights take place in control time positions, while it's about 28% for Price. Both below average. This will probably be more likely to be a stand-up battle. The big area that I'm seeing here is in a strength of schedule discrepancy. Niko Price showing a 1.96 ratio to a 1.42 for Pereira. The average amount of fights that a Price opponent has is 13.33, and it's only 9.2 for Pereira. So the average opponent for Niko Price has a record of 8.83 and 4.5. Very good. Almost 2-to-1 ratio. While for Pereira, it's a little bit less experience and not as good of a ratio, but still a winning record at 5.4 and 3.8. Niko Price has wins over more experienced competition, but the ratio is almost the same. And then when we look at the losses, Niko Price really only losing to very high-level competition. An average record of the guy that beats Niko Price is 8-3 in the UFC with a 2.67 ratio, while for Pereira it's 9-7 with a 1.29 ratio. So one of the things that's not on the stats here is, how elaborate of a dance routine does Pereira have planned for this fight? Because, man, when he fought Tristan Connolly, it was hilarious. DC was calling that fight, and, they were in commercial break while Pereira was doing his dance routine. But then as he was walking into the cage and he's doing backflips and stuff, DC's going, I want everybody to know that this man just danced for 6 minutes straight. 6 minutes. That song went on for longer than it should. He danced longer than it should. And now he's doing backflips. He goes, this guy's going to gas. He was saying it right from the jump. It was so funny. So we gotta, that's one of the things we do have to ask. How elaborate is Pereira's pre-fight dance routine going to be? Because if he gasses out against Niko Price, he's going to have a ton of problems. Because Niko Price brings the pressure. He offers 13 significant strikes per minute, while Pereira's average opponents have only been offering about 7 against him. So he's going to see twice as much volume as he's used to seeing. He's going to see 10 times more pressure than he's used to seeing. And then, Price is just a guy that I think everybody else has been afraid of being landed on by Pereira. I don't see Price being afraid of it. I think he's going to pressure him. I think Pereira is at his best when he's able to move, when he's able to evade, when he's able to keep distance, because he can strike so hard from a very far distance. But Price is not the type of fighter to stand in front of somebody. I think he's going to pressure Pereira. I think Pereira's going to gas out sooner than he's used to gassing out, because he's going to be facing a lot more pressure than he's used to. And I really do like the plus money on Niko Price here. I already bet Niko Price is an underdog. I got him at plus 140. And I've already bet the fight doesn't go to decision in this one, because I think somebody's getting knocked the fuck out in this fight. I can't wait for this fight, Brady. This is the best fight on the card. I'm so jazzed for it. I got bets on it. It's going to be exciting. Somebody's going to get served. There's going to be dancing. There's going to be spinning. There's going to be everything that you want in a fight is in this fight. And I can't wait for it, man. This is going to be the best one.
Dude, I can't wait either. I mean, if this was a dance competition, we'd see like Michel Pereira like minus 500, minus 600. But, this is a fight, and we do see Michel Pereira as the slight favorite, opening up a minus 175, currently minus 160, and Niko Price opening up plus 150, currently plus 140. So some money is coming in on the Niko Price side, and I kind of agree with that line movement. I think this is a very close fight. I think it's a very tough fight to call as well. You brought up a ton of great points, so don't hate your plus money shot there. But yeah, Melon brought up a very interesting point. So Pereira is going to play into the fans, and now there's fans back. Pereira is going to lose his whole game plan for the fans. So that's interesting to note, because I do recall an interview where he's talking about basically he cares about entertaining. He cares about entertaining the fans. And you take a look at his fights against Diego Sanchez. I believe there were fans potentially, but Zelim Imadaev, September 5th of 2020, I don't think there was fans in that fight. And we saw where he wasn't really messing around that much. And then Chaos Williams, there definitely wasn't fans in that fight. We saw there was like no messing around at all. So we are going to have fans here. So you got to think, hey, maybe he does go out there, do cartwheels, do flips. Could you see something like that? Could you think that, since the fans are back, do you think Pereira might go back to his old ways here?
The thing is, I think Price's pressure style is going to bring the best out of Pereira. I don't think it's going to be a fight that Pereira likes. I don't think he's going to be comfortable at all. But yeah, man, I think really that when you got Price as one of the two guys in the cage, you got to love the under. You got to love the fact that somebody's going to be forced to fight. You're just not going to be able to dance around the outside and pick Niko Price apart. He'll fucking run right at you and tackle you. Like eventually he's just going to come right at you. So yeah, I see Pereira being put in a position where he has to try to knock Price out, because I don't think he's going to be comfortable at all, because Price just brings so much pressure and has such a good chin that I think he's going to bring an all-action style out of Pereira here, and I think we're going to see just an amazing fight.
Yeah, if Pereira does not knock him out, like, he's going to get outlanded. And you kind of look through Pereira's record, and this is going to be not the toughest test of his career, probably, but this is going to be a completely different matchup than the guys he's been facing. Completely different from a Danny Roberts, a Connolly, a Sanchez, an Imadaev, a Chaos Williams, because you can't prepare for a guy like Niko Price. He's going to come forward and do whatever the hell he wants. Niko Price, you take a look at some of the volume that Michel Pereira's opponents are landing. In the Chaos Williams fight, Chaos Williams only threw 127 strikes. In the Imadaev fight, Imadaev only threw 90 strikes. Let's go to the Tristan Connolly fight. Connolly did throw only 125 strikes. And then we take a look at Niko Price's last couple fights. Against Donald Cerrone, he landed 150 strikes. He threw 312. And then against Vicente Luque in that fight, he threw 291. So, yeah, I think Michel Pereira is going to be forced to exchange here. I think he's going to need a knockout for sure. I'm personally picking Michel Pereira to get the knockout just based off the fact that Niko Price has no regards for striking defense whatsoever. But if anybody's going to be able to knock out Pereira, it is going to be Niko Price. But for me, I'm more so looking at the fight does not go to decision. I think there's a ton of recency bias on this line. You take a look at it. The fight doesn't go to decision is minus 170. Typically, you'll see Niko Price fights for the fight doesn't go to like minus 300. But Price did go to decision for the first time in his UFC career. In his last fight against Donald Cerrone, I see people talking about Cerrone's a bum and all that. But yeah, not a good look. Not a good look. I think he was kind of starstruck in that fight. I don't know how Cerrone was able to take 150 strikes from Niko Price. But prior to that, finish, win, finish, loss, finish, win, finish, loss, finish, win, finish, win, finish, loss, finish, win, finish, loss, finish, win. So, yeah, I mean, he's a killer-be-kill fighter. He either gets to finish or gets finished himself. And then you take a look at Pereira. I think there's some recency bias with there as well. Chaos Williams and him went to decision. Everybody expected a finish, including me. But, again, you take a look at the volume numbers in there. Michel Pereira only threw 79 strikes in a 3-round fight. You've got to imagine that Niko Price is going to be coming forward, attempting triple, quadruple that number. And then Chaos Williams, again, only threw 127 strikes. And even in that fight, Chaos Williams did outland them in every single round. 12 to 11 in the first round, 22 to 19 in the second round, and then 21 to 14 in the third round. So I think Michel Pereira is knockout or bust. I'm personally going with Michel Pereira, but yeah, the money line does seem a little bit off to me. So yeah, don't hate your underdog stab there whatsoever. But for me, I'm looking at that fight doesn't go, and I really do like that play.
And the thing about Price is, Pereira hypnotizes guys because he's so dynamic, so electric, so powerful with his striking. And so it's natural as somebody who, a human being who cares about your own well-being, to be very careful in front of Michael Pereira. But with Niko Price has no fucking concern for his well-being at all. So he's not going to stand in front of him. He's not going to try to figure him out. He's going to march forward and make it hell on Pereira. And it's because he doesn't have regard for his own safety. This is the first time that Pereira is going to face somebody who literally doesn't care if Pereira hits him.
Yeah.
So I think it's going to be a very interesting stylistic matchup, man. And do not blink during this fight. Do not walk away, and just make sure you watch this one. This one's probably the best one on the card.
I agree. Both guys hit hard. Like Michel Pereira, he hits very hard. We don't see a lot of volume out of him, but Niko's going to bring the volume out of him, and we all know Price can crack. He can hit very hard as well. So yeah, I see a finish. I think there's honestly a ton of value on that line. I have not bet it yet because I'm waiting for it to open up on FanDuel Sportsbook. The under 2.5 that has not opened up yet. Let's see what the under 2.5 is there. I don't think I brought it up. Minus 125 on 5 dimes. I don't have access to 5 dimes, but if I did, that would be a bet. That would be a bet. Minus 125. I love that number. Yeah. So we'll get to the next fight. this is going to be the last fight before we do get on the main card. And it's a very good one, a very good fight here. We have Carlos Condit going against Max Griffin. Carlos Condit, 37 years old. He is 6'2", 75-inch reach. Going against Max Griffin, 35 years old. Going to be 2 years younger, a 5'11", going to have a 3-inch reach or height disadvantage, and he's going to have actually a 1-inch reach disadvantage. We'll take a look at the last couple fights between the two. Carlos Condit did go on like a 5-fight losing streak, including some of those where it was Neil Magny beat him by decision, Alex Oliveira submitted him, Michael Chiesa submitted him, but he did, snap that 5-fight losing streak, getting wins over Court McGee in a fight where, Court McGee shot 0 takedowns, and that still, till this day, puzzles me. And then you go see Court McGee in his next fight go out there and take down Claudia Silva, a legit BJJ black belt 3 times. So that still has me stumped. I think I picked McGee in that fight. The next fight against Matt Brown, I did pick Condit to get the dub there, and he did as well. So, yeah, 2-fight win streak for Carlos Condit, Court McGee, and Matt Brown. And then as far as Max Griffin, he did beat Zalim Imadaev by decision, lost to Alex Morono in a very good fight. That was a very good fight. And then he lost to Alex Oliveira by split decision. I really thought that, Max Griffin won that fight. It was close, though. And then he knocked out Ramiz Brahimaj in the fight where he took off his entire ear, and then he knocked off San Kanan. I remember having a bet on Max Griffin. I forget what number I got him at, but was not expecting him to knock out Song, but that was awesome to see. So, interesting fight here. Can't wait to you break it down. Weezy, what do you got here for the stats?
Yeah, big experience advantage here for Carlos Condit, but both of these guys have been around for a minute. Condit's 37, and you would think that Griffin's much younger, but he's 35. 361 minutes in the cage and 45 professional fights for Carlos Condit. And for Griffin, 250 minutes in the professional cage, 25 pro fights. So, these guys have both been around the block. Carlos Condit has been fighting since the age of 18. He has a almost 19-year MMA career. This guy was born to do this. He's excellent at it, and you're probably going to have to kill him to get him out of there because he just wants to keep fighting. And he actually has looked good in his last 2 fights. And Griffin has too. I mean, both these guys are on 2-fight winning streaks right now. Condit obviously been in the UFC longer and obviously been fighting at a higher level longer than Max Griffin. 9-9 in the UFC for Condit, 5-6 for Griffin. About 100 more minutes in the UFC cage for Carlos Condit. And the average fight time about the same for both these guys at about 13 and 12 minutes. Finish stats. Carlos Condit has finished 56%, so 5 of his 9 UFC wins have come by KO. And overall, he's got an 88% finish rate, 41% by sub, 47% by KO. All of those subs, though, came before his 18 fights in the UFC. He has never subbed anybody in the UFC. Max Griffin, 60% knockout rate or in the UFC. So 3 of his 5 UFC wins have finished inside the distance. And overall, he's got a 53% knockout rate, a 12% submission rate for a 65% overall finish rate. And if we look at how these guys get finished, Condit's been finished in 4 of his 9 UFC losses, 3 of them by sub, 1 of them by knockout. And if we look at how he loses fights overall, 46% of his pro losses have come by submission, only 8% by KO. Both of these guys are extremely hard to knock out, as they've only been knocked out 17% and 11% in their pro careers. So if we look at the striking stats here, we see 4 significant strikes landed per minute out of 10.29 offered. So quite a bit of volume out of Condit, 39% striking accuracy, not stellar. While Griffin, it's 4.14 out of 8.46 for a 49% striking accuracy. Both of these guys showing some power. Griffin a little bit more on the aggregate than Condit, but 0.57 knockdowns per 15 minutes for Griffin, 0.38 for Condit. If we look at the striking defense numbers, we see that Carlos Condit is absorbing 2.7 out of 6.08 significant strikes per minute for a 55% striking defense. And Griffin is absorbing 3.94 out of 9.03 offered against him for a 56% striking defense. Both of these guys, not what I would call chinny. At Condit, 0.25 knockdowns against per 15 minutes, only 0.11 per 15 minutes for Griffin. But what's in these stats that I think is very interesting, this is where I see an advantage for Condit on the feet. Condit is offering 10.29 significant strikes per minute, and his opponents are only offering 6. He's almost throwing twice the volume as his opponents are. That's very impressive. That catches the judges' eyes. For Max Griffin, he's landing 4.14 and absorbing 3.94. So he's outlanding his opponents, but the ratio of not only the strikes landed to strikes absorbed is way better for Condit, but also the ratio of strikes thrown is way better. Max Griffin's opponents are throwing more strikes than he is. Max Griffin's throwing 8.46 per minute. Griffin's opponents are throwing 9.03. While for Condit, he's throwing 10.29 per minute. His opponents are only throwing 6. So volume is a big deal here for Condit on the feet. Now, we know that Max Griffin's a big favorite in this fight. He's probably almost around minus 190, I think, right now. And here's why, okay? Max Griffin, 15 out of 29 takedowns he's been successful on, 51.72% takedown percentage. He's averaging 1.7 per 15 minutes and getting 18.68% control time against his opponents. Condit, in 18 fights, has only attempted 18 takedowns. So he only attempts 1 takedown per fight, but he does get half of them. So 50% takedown percentage, 0.57 takedowns per 15 minutes, 0.7 sub-attempts, only getting 10.92% control time. So if we look at the control time numbers here, we see that Griffin is slightly out-controlling his opponents, 18.68% to 16.76%. But if we look at Condit's controlling his opponents 11% of the time, but he's being controlled 31% of the time. So the reason that the line is so wide and people are seeing Griffin as a favorite, even though Condit has fought the better competition and has a slightly better UFC record, is because Carlos Condit has a putrid 34.88% takedown defense. He is getting taken down 3.56 times per 15 minutes. That is a ton. He has only successfully defended 30 of the 86 takedowns attempted against him. So he's easy to take down. He's easy to hold down. However, he is very active off his back. He throws a lot of elbows, and he does throw up a lot of submissions. He's attempting 0.7 submissions per 15 minutes. So Griffin can get him down. Can he hold him down? Can he out-ground and pound Condit? Yeah, that's probably his path to victory here. That's what the books are seeing, because Condit's takedown defense has been so bad. And if I look at the advanced stats here for a second, for Condit, let me just kind of go through this and just so you guys get an idea how much this guy is getting taken down. I'm just going to look at his career stats, and I'm going to tell you the takedown attempts and how many he's stuffed in his fight. So if we look at the defensive side here, I'm just going to read the takedowns attempted and the takedowns gotten. His first fight in the UFC, they were 5 for 5 on takedown attempts against him. 3 for 4 in the next fight. 3 for 8 in the next fight. 1 for 1. 1 for 3. 7 out of 8. 12 out of 15. 6 out of 15. 3 out of 3. 1 out of 1. 6 out of 9. 3 out of 3. 4 out of 5. And then finally, in his most recent fight, he showed the best takedown defense he's ever had by successfully defending 5 out of 6 takedown attempts. So even though he's in his late 30s, it's never too late to improve. So Matt Brown was actually unsuccessful on 5 out of 6 takedown attempts in their fight. But this guy is getting taken down a whole ton. That's why people are on the Griffin side. But I think on the feet, Griffin's going to get out-volumed. I think Condit throws the longer strikes. I think he throws the more effective strikes, and he has more strikes in his arsenal. Another thing, Max Griffin's jab is excellent, but Carlos Condit's fighting out of both stances now. And he fought almost the entire Court McGee fight out of the southpaw stance. So if Max Griffin's best weapon striking is his jab, and Carlos Condit chooses to fight this fight southpaw, it's going to take away the jab of Griffin, and then he's going to have to really go to that wrestling even more in order to win rounds here. So I could see Condit even getting a late finish if Max Griffin gasses out from trying to take Condit down and hold him down, because I don't think he's going to win this fight on the feet. The big difference here, if we look at the strength of schedule stats, we'll see that in the wins, in the losses, and in the overall, Carlos Condit has the better ratio, and he's fighting the more experienced opponents by a huge margin in his wins. So in Carlos Condit's 9 wins, he's beating guys with an average record of 10.67 and 6.56 with 17.22 total fights, while the average guy that Max Griffin is beating in the UFC has a 2.4 and 2.2 record. So he's beating a lot less experienced competition than guys like Condit. So I see a big strength of his schedule advantage here for Condit, an experience advantage for Condit, a stand-up advantage for Condit. What I see as the huge path to victory, though, is Max Griffin going to those takedowns, holding Carlos Condit down and winning rounds that way. It's an intriguing fight. I actually am leaning Condit here. I think that Max Griffin's fights where he has taken people down, he's gotten robbed in a couple of those fights. He had a fight against Thiago Alves where he outscored him, outlanded him, took him down 3 times. Alves didn't take him down at all, and he lost that fight by decision. Another cheeky little stat here from Max Griffin is that he had the second most takedowns in the UFC in the calendar year 2019. Only Curtis Blades had more takedowns than him. He had 12 takedowns in those 3 fights that he had in 2019. 4 against Morono, 6 against Imadaev, and 2 against Alves. So I think there was something else I wanted to bring attention to. Oh, yeah. Let's just bring attention to the losses for Carlos Condit. First loss in the UFC, Martin Kampmann. Second loss, former champion George St. Pierre. Third loss, former champion Johnny Hendricks. Fourth loss, former champion Tyron Woodley. Fifth loss, former champion Robbie Lawler. Sixth loss, former championship challenger Damian Maia. Next loss, 18-7 Neil Magny, perennial top 10 guy. Next loss, Alex Oliveira. That's his worst loss in the UFC, is Alex Oliveira. And a lot of people would say that he, well, no, that was the other. That was the Griffin that almost beat Oliveira. And then Chiesa, who right now is a top 5 welterweight. So this guy is only losing to the highest level competition, and he's beating guys like Court McGee, Matt Brown, Thiago Alves, Martin Kampmann, Nick Diaz, Dong Hyun Kim, Dan Hardy, Rory McDonald, Jake Ellenberger. This guy's had 18 fights in the UFC. Not one of them has been easy. I think this line is too wide. I could see Carlos Condit winning this fight by decision. Which way are you leaning?
Yeah, so I have a bet on Max Griffin after you going all over. It kind of makes me rethink it, but no, you mentioned the big points that I do want to bring up is going to be the takedown defense of Max Griffin, and it was just so weird in that Carlos Condit fight with Court McGee, where Condit did outland him 84-88. Condit having 88 strikes. Court McGee is somebody that definitely goes for takedowns throughout his career. He attempted 0 takedowns in that fight. It just sucks to see, because I would have really liked to see what would have happened if Court McGee really did try to take down Condit. But as far as Max Griffin, there were some things I did want to point out. Max Griffin, very good wrestling, decent top control. I guess the one thing I was worried about would be a potential Condit submission off his back, because like you said, he's very active with submissions and all that. But you kind of take a look at it, and Condit does not have a submission win since 2008. Back in the WEC days. He does not have a knockout win since Thiago Alves back in 2015, 6 years ago. And Max Griffin's very, very durable. Only been knocked out once officially, but it was kind of like a mercy stoppage where Colby Covington was beating his ass for 3 rounds, and the ref just kind of stopped the fight. He wasn't out or nothing like that. Carlos Condit, very durable himself. So I do see this going to decision. Could see it playing out close. I mean, if you're Max Griffin, you got to know, man, if you have any, fight IQ at all, go for some takedowns. I mean, the writing is on the wall. 39% takedown defense for Carlos Condit. You mentioned the 30% control time against. Max Griffin needs to get this fight down to the mat early and often, and I do think he does. But, man, I don't know if they wrote in the contract against Court McGee that Court McGee's not allowed to shoot takedowns or what, but hopefully, Max Griffin does have some fight IQ there. So I did beat, some line movement. Like I said, got him at minus 172. You do see Max Griffin minus 190 now. Don't expect it to get any wider than that. I do see a lot of people on the Carlos Condit side. You take a look at the over 2.5 rounds is that was the price. Over 2.5 rounds is minus 220, minus 200. I don't hate that. Even the fight goes the distance, minus 180, minus 170. I don't really see a finish either side. Do you have any preference on the over-under in this fight?
I was telling people when I did the Balls Deep breakdown of this fight on my channel that my bet was going to be Carlos Condit by decision at plus 290. I'm probably going to do a half unit on that. But what I said in my video was, if you like Griffin, take him by decision. And if you like Condit, take him by decision. Because the bookies think it's going to decision. Both these guys are incredibly tough, and they tend to finish guys that aren't on their opponents, in this case, caliber. So, yeah, I'm seeing the fight goes to decision. My bet is going to be plus 290 Carlos Condit by decision.
Yeah, don't hate it. I don't see either getting finished. I think it does play out somewhat close, but if you're on Max Griffin, you got to hope that he does go out there and get takedowns. I do give the striking advantage as well to Carlos Condit, even in this day and age. So yeah, we'll definitely see. I know Max Griffin had an interview saying he was going to finish Carlos Condit. Don't really like to hear that. If I wanted to, hear an interview, I wanted to hear Max Griffin talking about taking him down and grinding him out. I wanted to hear more of that, but he did say that he's going to finish Carlos Condit, which I'd be shocked if that happens. So give me Max Griffin by decision. You are going Condit by decision. Both are pretty solid looks there, and we'll get into the next fight here, which is a interesting fight, man. Sean O'Malley going against Kris Moutinho. And we were kind of joking around, I think the night before this fight was made, and we were thinking about all the potential matchups, Ricky Simone, Ray Borg, Cody Stamann, Marlon Vera. And I was like, dude, Sean O'Malley is going to fight somebody we've never heard of before. And then the next day, he gets matched up against Kris Moutinho. Kris Moutinho, I was like, hey, I've never heard of this guy. So I was kind of right there. But yeah, Sean O'Malley, 26 years old, 5'11", 72-inch reach. Kris Moutinho is 28 years old, 5'7", 67-inch reach. Moutinho making his UFC debut. He is 3-2 in his last 5 fights. A submission win, knockout loss, Tony Gravely, and then a decision win as well, where you have Sean O'Malley did have that decision win over Andre Sukumtop, did have that KO win over Jose Quinones, a KO win over Eddie Wineland, a knockout loss to Marlon Vera, and a knockout win against Thomas Almeida. So right off the bat, like looking at the strength of schedule here, or the last 5, and the wins don't really impress me for Sean O'Malley. Like Andre Sukumtop in a fight that did play out, somewhat close. A KO win over Jose Quinones, who I don't know if he's still on the roster, but if he is, he probably shouldn't be. A knockout win over Eddie Wineland, and then a win over Thomas Almeida, who's on a really big skid as well. So those don't really impress me. I would have liked to see him fight a Ricky Simone, fight a Ray Borg, fight a Cody Stamann, fight somebody that is not Kris Moutinho. But interesting fight here. Weezy, curious to hear your thoughts on this one, dude.
Yeah, obviously we don't have anything on Moutinho. He doesn't have any UFC fights, so there's nothing here on the stat side for Moutinho. He's taking the fight on short notice. He's going to be 4 inches height disadvantage, 5-inch reach disadvantage, and he's at a massive talent discrepancy here too. But, we've been going through the strength of schedule stats for all these fighters, even going back to guys like Tavares and Akhmedov and Maya and all these fighters that we've seen, and you talk about a superstar caliber guy like O'Malley that's, if you watch UFC, you know who this guy is. And then you look at his strength of schedule and you see it's a 1 ratio overall. The average fighter that he fights has a 4-4 record. His wins are 0.82 ratio. The average guy that he's beating has a 3 and 3.67 ratio. And then, he lost to Marlon Vera, and there's no shame in that. Marlon Vera's a stud, but Sean O'Malley's okay. Kris Moutinho's not really, we haven't seen much of him, man. Yeah, dude, I don't know, man. The line is ridiculously wide. There's no value on this line. You're not betting O'Malley straight on the money line at minus 900 or whatever it is. So, I'm just staying away from this one. I'm not playing. And the one thing I'm not doing is with those narrow ass legs that O'Malley has. I'm not putting money on him at minus 900, watching him go down after one calf kick. It could happen. You know, I'm not touching this fight, dude. You know, I'm just going to enjoy what's probably going to be a walk-off knockout for O'Malley, and it should be, because if he doesn't knock this guy out, he's going to be the laughingstock of the UFC, I think. So he better get this done, man, because there's a lot of people that are putting a lot of money down with not much to show for it. You know, even if you do win, you bet $9, you get one back, you know. So I'm not touching this fight, dude. You betting this, or are we putting 1-800-GAMBLER up on the screen again?
Yeah, I think we might need to put up the gambler sign, and I 100% think that O'Malley wins. But you mentioned the odds they're insane, man. O'Malley minus 900, Moutinho plus 550. Even like the inside the distance is, you know, something insane. We don't see numbers like, even like in Amanda Nunes fights against Megan Anderson. It probably should have been this, but it was like minus 150, something like that. But here we have O'Malley wins inside the distance minus 320. Minus 320. The KO line, I don't see it. I think on FanDuel, the KO line's like plus 240, something like that. Like, even then, just like, what's the point? And I know a lot of people are going to be parlaying O'Malley. I already see it happening. Lots of parlays, minus 900. Lots of people are going to be parlaying the inside the distance. And hey, it probably does hit, but man, I wouldn't recommend, you know, laying the minus 900 here, because Moutinho, I mean, he's not horrible. He's not horrible. He's a tough guy. He comes forward. You know, solid wrestler. So maybe he can have some success, but man, the guy's very hittable. He fights with his hands down at times, and we have seen him knocked out twice before as well. I think he's been finished 4 times in all 4 of his losses, 2 by sub, 2 by knockout. So even then, I wouldn't mess around with the O'Malley knockout or the O'Malley sub. And then you see the O'Malley inside the distance just minus 320, which is crazy, because what I don't like about O'Malley, I mean, people love this. He really goes for that walk-off knockout. I mean, in the Almeida fight, the last one, he could have finished Almeida in that first round. He dropped him bad. Almeida was out of it, and then he just walks away. Like, you got to finish up, especially considering I had a ton of him in DraftKings, so I was really pissed there. I also had, I think, the under 2.5. I think that hit as well. But still, like, I really wanted that first round knockout, and he's somebody that if he does knock down Moutinho, maybe he doesn't follow up. Maybe he wants that walk-off knockout. So I really don't like that about him. But, you know, people love the guy. I like the guy myself. It's just, you know, minus 900 straight, minus 320 inside the distance. I mean, at that point, like, what's the point? Even like the under 1.5 rounds, minus 180, minus 180. In the Craig Hill fight, it was like plus 100. Just think about that. In the Craig Hill fight, it was plus 100 for the under 1.5. And then this fight, we have minus 180. So, I mean, do you have any preference on the over-under? I personally wouldn't even, you know, think about laying minus 180 on an under 1.5, but do you have any interest in it?
No, I mean, let's say you don't want to lay the 900 on O'Malley. Maybe you just take the fight doesn't go to decision as a parlay piece in a Hail Mary or something like that, because Sean O'Malley has been finished in 100% of his losses, and Moutinho has been finished in 100% of his losses. That's the best combination that you can ever hope for when you're betting an under. So there's, you know, the under 1.5, you made a good point. You know, is O'Malley going to look for that one hitter quitter where if he doesn't quite quit, he's going to let him back up and then try to do it again? And that could take more than 7.5 minutes, but he should get this done. You know, if you're looking to bet this fight, bet the under or bet the fight doesn't go to decision. That way, if Sean O'Malley's ankle gives out 10 seconds into the fight, hey, you cashed. So, yeah, I'm not touching this one, though, dude. It's too low level of fight. I'm going to sit back. I'm going to enjoy Sean doing his work. He's such a fun striker to watch. It'll be more fun to watch if I don't have any money on this fight, though. I can just watch him starch this clown.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, the fight doesn't go to decisions, like minus 475. I do see it finishing as well myself. This is a UFC assist layup for Suga, first round KO plus 160 or round 2 plus 370 available. Yeah, I'm not even going to get into that as well. I think it could be very well a trap. Like I mentioned, the whole walk-off knockout thing, I don't love that. I wish he would just follow up, but he wants a highlight knockout. That's all good. Inside the 60 seconds is a lock of the card. I mean, like I said, Montino's a tough guy. He's not a bum. He's not an absolute bum. He's solid. I mean, I think O'Malley wins, but he's not like a complete bum. But yeah, O'Malley wins. People are going to parlay him, all that good stuff, and it probably does hit. But yeah, the minus 900, a little bit iffy on that myself. But he does win. If he does not win, that's extremely embarrassing. Even like if he takes this guy into like round 3, round 2, that's even embarrassing in my opinion. You should knock out this guy in the first round. So I'm with everybody else. I do think Sean does knock him out in that first round. Anything less, pretty disappointing here. So getting to the next fight here. Yeah, I don't know why this is on the main card rather than the Michel Price fight or even like the Giles Duplessis fight. But yeah, we have Irene Aldana going against Yana Kunitskaya. We have Aldana, who is 33 years old, 5'9", 68-inch reach. Yana, who is 31 years old, 5'6", 68-inch reach. Taking a look at the level of competition between the two. Last 5 fights, we have Holly Holm lost against Aldana in a fight that Holly Holm, that was like the best she's ever looked. I think Holm is like 39 years old, about to be 40. And I was shocked at how good Holly Holm looked in that fight. And then she did knock out Caitlin Vieira in that first round. She did win a decision over Vanessa Melo, lost a split decision over Raquel Pennington, and then submitted Betch Correa. Then you take it Yana Kunitskaya. She did beat Caitlin Vieira by decision. She beat Julia Stolyarenko by decision. Got a knockout loss in the third round to Aspen Ladd, and then beat Marion Renault and Lena Landsberg by decision. So, yeah, curious to see the stats on this one. It seems like everybody's betting Yana this week. But, yeah, let's get into it here.
This is what I would call a clash of styles here. Aldana striker, Kunitskaya grappler. And Kunitskaya isn't a pure grappler, but if you look at the stats here, well, let's start with the pro experience. Very similar numbers, all right? Kunitskaya has been doing it 4 years longer, but essentially everything else very similar. If we look at the UFC experience, Aldana 9 fights, Kunitskaya 6. They both have winning records. Aldana 5-4, Kunitskaya 4-2. About twice as much time in the cage for Aldana in her 9 fights. Kunitskaya's 6. Average fight time pretty close to 15 minutes for both of them. If we look at how Aldana finishes fights, 12 pro wins. 6 of them by knockout, 3 of them by sub, 3 of them by decision. While for Kunitskaya, 14 fights, 7 of them by knockout, 1 of them by submission. So, you know, definitely they're more likely to finish by knockout than they are by submission. And Aldana doesn't have any submission losses in her career, while Kunitskaya in her 5 losses has been finished 80% of the time. 2 by sub, 2 by knockout, 1 by decision. And in Aldana's 6 losses, she has lost 2 of them by knockout. So when we talk about this being a striker versus grappler matchup, we'll see it in the striking statistics. Irene Aldana only has a 38% striking accuracy, but she is landing 5.52 out of 14.23 strikes offered per minute. So she is a volume monster. She's literally almost out doubling the volume of Yana Kunitskaya in her fights. Kunitskaya is only offering 7.34 strikes, landing 4.42. Kunitskaya, much higher percentage, though, at 57% striking accuracy, as Aldana is only 38. But the accuracy is due to the fact that Kunitskaya spends a ton of time in control time. So she's throwing higher percentage strikes. In terms of knockdowns, we got 1 for Aldana in her UFC career, 1 knockdown in 736 strikes landed. So not a ton of power there. Kunitskaya has no knockdowns. If we look at the volume that is being thrown against Aldana, even though she's throwing 14.23 significant strikes per minute, her opponents are offering 15.38. So Irene Aldana's fights are taking place more than 85% in the middle of the cage at striking distance, while for Kunitskaya, it's only 30%. So 85% for Aldana, 30% for Kunitskaya. So that's what I mean when I talk about a clash of styles. It's clear that Aldana is going to want to keep this striking at range, and it's clear that Kunitskaya is going to be more comfortable keeping this fight against the cage or on the ground. So let's look at the grappling stats. Only 4 takedown attempts for Irene Aldana in 9 fights. Another reason to suggest that she's just a pure striker. 50% takedown accuracy, only 0.23 per 15 minutes, 0.11 submission attempts per 15 minutes, and only 5.3% control time for. While for Kunitskaya, 15 takedown attempts in 6 UFC fights, so 2.5 per fight. She got more than half of them at 53.33%. She's averaging 1.62 takedowns per 15 minutes, 0.2 sub-attempts for a 50% control time. And a lot of that came in, was cage control time in the Stolyarenko fight. Now, on defense, this is where Aldana shines. 7 out of 45 times her opponents have been successful taking her down. So that's almost an 85% takedown defense. That's stellar. And not only that, she's facing 5 takedown attempts per fight. So she's actually facing twice as many takedown attempts as Kunitskaya. She only offers 2.5 takedown attempts per fight. Aldana's, used to being attempted to take down 5 times per fight. So she'll be ready for the game plan of Kunitskaya. She's got excellent takedown defense. She's going to try to stay on the outside and move and pick her apart from the outside, while Kunitskaya is going to try to get inside, get in the clinch, make it dirty, maybe trip her, get her down to the ground. So that's how I see the fight taking place. If we look at the strength of schedule statistics, we see that Kunitskaya is fighting the better ratioed competition, beating the better ratioed competition, and losing to the better ratioed competition. However, it would appear that Aldana on the aggregate is fighting more experienced competition. If we look at the last 5 names, Aldana, Holm, Vieira, Mello, Pennington, Correa. From the middle, Vanessa Mello's the worst, on that list, and I was going to say earlier that the Amadowski Hu Yazong fight is like the male version of Vanessa Mello versus Sarah Moras, where it's just complete scraping the bottom of the barrel, and Vanessa Mello was the bottom of the barrel in this division here. But I'm giving the Kunitskaya the slight strength of schedule advantage, definitely the grappling advantage, but Aldana has excellent takedown defense. And I think if this fight stays on the feet at distance, Irene Aldana should win it easily. I'm thinking this fight probably does go to decision, although I wouldn't be surprised if there was a finish, seeing as Kunitskaya has lost 4 out of her 5 losses came by finish, and 2 out of Aldana's 6 losses came by finish. So there could be a finish here, but I'm not feeling really strong either way here. I see why this fight is lined pretty close.
Yeah, it's going to go to decision more than likely. You mentioned if it does finish, it's going to be Aldana. Kind of concerning seeing Yana has been finished that many times, but it probably goes to decision. It's probably very close. I just don't want to bet it, man. I don't want to get into that because I just know that first, like I told you the other day, I was like, if I bet Yana Kunitskaya at plus 120, because she was plus 120 at the time we were talking about this, I was like, first of all, I got to win the bet. Second of all, I got to beat the judges as well. So, the judges have been crap lately, and this is going to decision. It's really hard to trust the judges. And, in all seriousness, this is going to be a very close fight. So, you take a look at the money line. Aldana opening up minus 125, currently minus 116. Yana opening up plus 105, currently minus 104. So money is coming in on Yana, rightfully so. I do think it should be lined like a pick'em. As far as the fight goes to decision, of course, it is juiced to minus 260. The over 2.5, minus 325. I know people like parlaying the overs and the fight goes on women's fights, but we've been seeing it lately that they have been finishing, so I'd be kind of careful about laying like minus 300 there. But I'll take Yana, the more well-rounded fighter. But if, like you said, if this does stay standing, Aldana probably does get it done. So I'll take Yana to take down Aldana here and there, control her against the cage. Just be the more well-rounded fighter as well. But really not extreme confidence in that pick. Not going to be betting it. I was very tempted when Yana was at like plus 120. I ended up passing. She's now at plus 100, minus 104. So especially now, I'm not touching this fight. Do you have any preference on the over-under, or do you think it goes over as well?
Touching that over-under, man. I could see it finishing, and I could easily see it going to decision. So I really have no opinion. I'm staying away from this fight as well.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's probably the best option there. Do want to say we do have like 96 people in here on the 4th of July, so that's pretty cool. Thank you guys so much for hanging out on a Sunday. We are here every Sunday, 7 o'clock, 15 p.m. Eastern time. Like I said, I've been getting a lot of great feedback from the show. It seems like people really do like it, and me and Uncle Weezy like doing it as well. It really does help me. I think it helps Uncle Weezy as well. Take a look at the stats, dig very deep into it. And I've been having a lot of success ever since we've been doing the show. I've had 3 winning weeks in a row. Hopefully don't jinx it, knock on wood, but hopefully make it a 4th winning week in a row here since the show has started. So yeah, if you guys can hit the like, it really does mean a ton for you guys watching in the future. I'll be putting timestamps in here as well, because I know it is a long video, lots of information, so people do love those timestamps. I'll be getting those as well. And yeah, so let's get into the next fight here. We have a very interesting one. We have Greg Hardy going against Tai Tuivasa. Greg Hardy's somebody that the UFC really does want to push, it seems like, putting him in a bunch of main cards. I believe he's been on a couple co-main events as well. But we have Greg Hardy, 32 years old, 6'5", 80-inch reach, going against Tai Tuivasa, 28 years old, 6'2", 75-inch reach. I think the tail of the tape is a little interesting here, as Hardy's going to have a 5-inch he's going to have a 7-inch reach advantage here against Tai Tuivasa, and he's going to have a 3-inch height advantage as well. He's going to have a 5-inch, my bad. He's going to have a 5-inch reach advantage, and he's going to have a 2 or 3-inch height advantage. There you go. As far as the last couple wins here, we have Tai Tuivasa did knock out one Harry Hunsucker in a pretty hilarious fight. He knocked out Stefan Struve. I actually bet the first round knockout prop in that fight for Tai Tuivasa. He got it at the last second. I think that was like the most happy I ever was cashing a bet. So that was awesome. He did lose to the submission by against Sergey Spivak, lost a close decision against Blaga Ivanov, and he lost by knockout against Junior Dos Santos in a fight where he was looking good in that first, got clipped in the second. JDS, I think, got into mount, was raining down punches. It was a pretty hilarious stoppage where JDS was landing down punches where Tai Tuivasa was like throwing up punches at the same time, and the ref ended up stopping it. But other than that, I don't think Tai Tuivasa has been knocked out. So very tough guy, very good chin. Greg Hardy got his first knockout loss against Marcin Tybura in a fight where he was looking very good in that first round. Ultimately ended up gassing out, got taken down, looked like he had no idea what to do on the mat, and Tybura was able to pound him out there pretty easily. Looked like Hardy kind of gave up in that spot. He knocked out Maurice Green. He beat Jorgen De Castro. He lost to Alexander Volkov by decision, and then he did beat Ben Sassoli, but it turned into a no contest. I think that was the Inhaler fight. So interesting fight here. We haven't talked about this fight at all, so kind of curious to see your thoughts on this one, Weezy.
Yeah, I like what the tail of the tape is telling me. I like that height advantage. I like that 5-inch reach advantage for Hardy. This is not a clash of style fights. These are 2 extremely hard-hitting heavyweights who don't grapple a lot. So I see this fight taking place in the center of the cage. I see somebody getting knocked out. So let's look at the numbers. I mean, we look at the finish stats. It's going to tell us what I just said. 86% of Greg Hardy's wins have come by knockout. 91% of Tai Tuivasa's pro wins have come by knockout. And even in the UFC, these guys have 80 and 83% finish rates overall. And then in terms of the losses, we got Hardy with 1 loss by KO. That was to Tybura by ground and pound. And we got Tuivasa's been subbed once. He's lost by KO once, and he's been decisioned once. So the striking stats are important here. And we see Tuivasa landing 4.38 out of 8.61, 51%. We see Hardy landing 4.83 out of 9.58 for 50%. So the striking accuracy almost identical. Hardy offering and landing just a little bit more. And then when we look at the power numbers, 1.56% knockdowns per total significant strikes landed for Tuivasa, very good. Probably puts him about in the top 6 or top 7 of the heavyweight division at 1.03 knockdowns per 15 minutes. And for Hardy, we're talking 0.86% of the time that he lands a significant strike, his opponent goes down, 0.62 knockdowns per 15 minutes. If we look at how they're ratioing their opponents, are they out-voluming in their opponents? The answer is yes on both sides. Tuivasa lands 4.38, only absorbs 3.44. Hardy lands 4.83, only absorbs 3.12. So Hardy lands more and absorbs less, showing about 5% better striking defense. Tuivasa has been knocked down. He's had 200 strikes landed against him, so he's been knocked down twice. Greg Hardy has never been knocked down. That being said, Greg Hardy hasn't faced that. I mean, other than the Combat Wombat, Ben Sosoli, there's probably not a whole lot of greatness there except for Volkov. But the Combat Wombat is definitely one of my favorite nicknames in the game. Grappling, I don't think we're going to see much here. Between the 18 UFC fights that Tuivasa and Hardy have together, these guys have combined for one takedown. So this is going to be a stand-up war. Somebody's going to probably get knocked out. I like the inside the distance prop. The fight doesn't go to decision prop, because these guys just hit extremely hard, and I don't see this fight. I don't see these guys really taking a break. I think they're gonna stand and bang until one of these guys falls. If we look at the strength of schedule numbers, we're talking about Tuivasa's got the better ratio when fighting the more experienced competition. The average record of a Tuivasa opponent, 6.88 and 5.13, compared to Hardy, 2.3 and 2.1. So Hardy is fighting the less experienced, less effective competition. Tuivasa's got better wins over more experienced competition, and the losses are pretty similar, with maybe Tuivasa's losses just being a little bit better than Hardy's. This fight is playing out super close in all the relevant statistics. I like the 5-inch reach advantage. I like the 3-inch height advantage for Hardy here. Tuivasa showed a little more power than Hardy has, but they both hit extremely hard. This is one that I have not really come down on either side yet. I think what I'm leaning here is that the fight doesn't go to decision, because both these guys hit so hard, but they're both extremely tough too. So, man, I'm having a hard time. I think I'm going to lean Greg Hardy here because of those measurables, because everything else I see is very similar here. What about you?
Yeah, it's very interesting. I'm going Hardy as well. I think it's going to be one of the more unpopular picks of the week, but you take a look at Hardy. I do think the 5-inch reach is huge here. I think that we're in the bigger cage as well. I think that's huge. And man, he looked really good. He looked really improved in that Tybura fight in that first round before Tybura was able to take him down. But I just don't really see Tuivasa going out there and taking down Greg Hardy. And you touched on some of the stats. Tuivasa has attempted 2 takedowns in the UFC and has landed 0 of them. There's some narratives out there that he's working with people. He's going to go out there and work on his wrestling. Even then, like, Hardy did show some solid takedown defense, but eventually Tybura was able to get him down. But yeah, Hardy did very well at kind of staying at range. Throwing a ton of volume. He outlanded Tybura 38-16 in that first round. It was just once Tybura got him down, he just had no clue what to do. And in this fight, like I said, a lot of people think this is going to hit the mat for some reason. I really don't know. We talked about the stats. I don't think it does. I think it does stay standing. And even like the fight doesn't go, I'm kind of iffy about it. You take a look at the under 1.5. If you do think the fight finishes, probably the under is the way to go, because I don't think either of these guys have finished a fight outside of that or over the 1.5 mark. They have a majority of their finishes in that first round. They have a few early second round finishes as well. So the under 1.5 is plus 160. The under 2.5 is minus 125. The fight doesn't go to decision is minus 160. It's just, like you mentioned it, Tuivasa is very, very tough. He is very tough. He has a brick for a head. It's hard to see Hardy knocking him out. I think if there is a finish in this fight, it's going to be the Tuivasa side, actually. The prop I was kind of looking at was going to be Greg Hardy by decision. Looks like some money's coming in on it. It opened up at plus 530, currently plus 320. I think Hardy is just going to stay on the outside, keep it at range, and just pick apart Tuivasa for 3 rounds. But like I said, if there's a finish, it is probably Tuivasa going to be able to close the distance. It just seems like it's hard to do against Hardy. He's very good at, if he does get trapped against the cage, he's very good at, circling out, keeping it at range. And like I mentioned, the big cage, I think that's huge for Hardy. As far as the money line, kind of already missed the boat. Hardy did open up at plus 145. Probably would have took the shot there, but now he's plus 115. Not too much interest there. I think the line still should be closer, but then again, I think the line is somewhat accurate. Tuivasa opening up minus 170, minus 135. This is a pass for me. A big pass for me. Even like the over unders don't really have the best read on it, because I can very well see it going to decision, and I can very well see a finish. I mean, they're both huge heavyweights that hit hard. But yeah, this is a pass for me. Any other final thoughts on this fight?
I think I'm just staying away from it, man. I'm going to enjoy this one because these guys are going to throw down and they both hit so hard. But I just, when I watch tape on these guys, and I have, and when I look at the numbers and I just don't see anything that's jumping out, I just try to stay away, and that's what I'm going to do. So we got two bangers here coming up for the last two fights. So let's concentrate on these, find the angles that are there, and make some money on these last two fights because I am staying away from Tuivasa Hardy.
Yeah, I know. I feel it there. We have a question. Hardy have a better chin than Ty? We probably don't know. I lean towards no, but Hardy has never been knocked down. His one knockout loss was in his last fight where it was ground and pound. So regardless, I think both guys have solid chins there. I hope Greg wins, as he's the best shot at beating France. Are you joking? You're joking, Melon, right? You think Greg Hardy has the best chance of beating
He's
France?
joking, yeah.
Okay.
It says it later in the chat, yeah.
Okay. All right, good. Thank goodness, man. Oh, you scared me. Okay. Good one. How could you think it wasn't a joke when I said 5 rounds? Good one, because Hardy has about a round and a half in him. What is up, the General? General's taking notes. Okay, co-main event. I'm looking forward to it. Very good fight here. We have Stephen Thompson going against Gilbert Burns. Gilbert Burns, a lot of people like this guy, definitely a fan favorite. And then we have Stephen Thompson, one of the most underrated fighters, in my opinion, in the entire UFC. He is 38 years old, and it's crazy to think about because you take a look at Stephen Thompson and what he's been doing lately. This is the best Stephen Thompson we've ever seen. He's really sitting down on his punches. He's looking phenomenal, and he's 38 years old. I do think we're going to see some regression very soon, but he's looking for a title shot. He's looking for a title shot. If he does get a win here, he could potentially fight for the title in his next fight. So, yeah, definitely could be a potential title eliminator here in a very good fight. You have Stephen Thompson going to have a 2-inch height advantage, 6 foot, going to have a 4-inch reach advantage as well, 75-inch reach, going against Gilbert Burns, who is 34 years old, 5'10", 71-inch reach. We'll take a look at the last couple fights between the two. Gilbert Burns did get knocked out by Kamaru Usman with a jab. He did beat Tyron Woodley by decision. He did knock out Damian Maia, 40-year-old Damian Maia. He did beat Gunnar Nelson by decision and did beat Alexei Konchenko by decision as well. So he is 4-1 in his last 5 fights. That one loss coming to the champ, Kamaru Usman. No shame in that whatsoever. As far as Stephen Thompson, did beat Jeff Neal by decision, did beat Vicente Luque by decision. That Luque fight was insane. I don't know how Luque was still standing after that fight. Luque's never been knocked out. I'm convinced he never will be because, man, Stephen Thompson hurt him bad like 3 or 4 times. I remember at the end of the fight, the ref was looking very close because Luque took an absolute beating the entire fight. The guy's chin is just, out of this world. He did get a knockout loss against Anthony Pettis. That was Stephen Thompson's only knockout loss. Kind of flukish, in my opinion, in a fight where Thompson was a big favorite in that fight, and he was clearly winning the fight up until a Superman punch did knock him out. He did lose to Darren Till, and then he did beat Jorge Mas, but also 3-2 in his last 5 fights in Thompson. So me and Uncle Weezy did do a deep dive on this fight on my channel for the co-main event. I thought we broke it down pretty good as well. We went like 40 minutes into details. If you guys want to go check that out, go for it. I think there's a lot of good information in there. But, breaking it down here and getting to the stats, Uncle Weezy, what do you see for this one?
Yeah, and we'll give you guys the abridged version here so we don't go another 40 minutes. But, yeah, dude, this is a great fight, man. And Wonder Boy, like you said, dude, he's 38 years old. But, God, does he look really good in those last 2 fights against studs like Neal and Luque. And he's just been incredible. His striking is fantastic. He manages distance so well. He's got fantastic takedown defense. And if you just stand and strike with this guy, you're going to get out volume, you're going to get out hit, and you're just going to lose the fight. So 23 professional fights for Burns, 21 for Thompson, 19-4 for Burns, 16-4 for Thompson, 80 more minutes in the UFC or in the pro cage for Stephen Thompson. Both of these guys had extensive careers before they got into MMA. Stephen Thompson in kickboxing, Gilbert Burns, a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu world champion. So we got an average fight time of 13.45 minutes for Thompson, 8.93 for Burns, and a little bit longer of a career for Thompson, about 2 years longer than Burns. And both of these guys got 16 UFC fights. Both of these guys have stellar records, right around a 75% winning percentage. Thompson has spent more time in the cage because he's had more 5-round fights, and the average fight time a little bit longer for Stephen Thompson. Gilbert Burns, an equal opportunity finisher. 42% of his pro wins by sub, 32% by KO. While Thompson, it's more we would expect, to be more KO centric here at 44% KO, only 6% by sub. So only one win professionally for Stephen Thompson by submission. If we look at how they get finished, they both have only lost by KO if they've been finished. So Gilbert Burns in 2 out of his 4 losses has been KO'd. Stephen Thompson has been KO'd in 1 out of his 4 losses. Striking statistics. We see that Gilbert Burns is landing 3.22 out of 7.03, 45% striking accuracy. Thompson lands more and offers more, 4.24 out of 9.65, a 44% striking accuracy. Both of these guys showing power. Thompson landing 10 UFC knockdowns on 985 significant strikes landed. Very impressive. And we see that in Gilbert Burns's, he has landed 4 UFC knockdowns and 579 strikes. So about twice as many knockdowns per 15 minutes for Thompson than there is for Burns. Both of these guys are absorbing less strikes than they land. Burns lands 3.22, absorbs 3.04. Thompson lands 4.24, only absorbs 2.8. So he's got a really great significant strike ratio. He's got a 59% striking defense, and that's a function of that karate style where he can hit you and you can't hit him because he's kicking with his legs and staying on the outside, while Burns is going to be using his fists more. So it's going to be really difficult for Gilbert Burns to close the distance in this fight. And I think you talked about it on your main event breakdown in that Dan Hooker is about the same size as Stephen Thompson, and Gilbert Burns really struggled to get inside there. And let's not forget that Hooker is a former 145er who was fighting at 155. Gilbert Burns is a former 155er who's now stepping up to 170, and he's fighting a guy in Wonderboy Thompson who has all 21 of his professional fights at welterweight. He's the right size for a welterweight. Burns is going to be the one that's undersized here. So Burns is going to have problems closing the distance here. Both of these guys have been knocked down. Gilbert Burns has been knocked down 6 times in 547 strikes landed. That is an alarming number when you're facing somebody that's as good a striker as Thompson. And Thompson has been knocked down 0.77% of the time on the 651 strikes landed against him. So he's been knocked down 4 times in the UFC. So if we look at the grappling stats, this is where we're going to look for Gilbert Burns to try to get some takedowns. He's attempted 70 takedowns in 16 fights. So that is about, 4.5 takedowns per fight, or just under 4, actually. 4.5. Sorry, my math sucks right now. 35% takedown percentage. Stephen Thompson has only attempted 11 takedowns in 16 fights, so he doesn't go to his wrestling much. But when he does, he gets them. He's got a 45.45% takedown accuracy for 0.32 per 15 minutes. We see that Gilbert Burns is controlling his opponents about twice as much time as he's being controlled, at about 26% to 13%. While for Stephen Thompson, he controls his opponent 7.41% of the time and gets controlled a little bit less than 10% of the time. So that tells us that Stephen Thompson is spending about 82% of his cage time in the center of the cage at a boxing and kickboxing range where he's most comfortable. For Gilbert Burns, that he's spending about 38% of his cage time in the grappling realm, which is where he's most comfortable. So I see Thompson being able to keep this fight where he is most comfortable using that 78% takedown defense that he has. And something that's really interesting, usually when you see a striker as good as Stephen Thompson, you will see them be facing a crazy amount of takedown attempts, sometimes 5, 6, 7, 8 per fight. Stephen Thompson has only had 32 takedowns attempted against him in 16 fights, which is very strange because you would think that people would just try to take him down over and over again because he's probably the best striker in the 170-pound division, but he's so effective at keeping range and using his karate style that a lot of people don't even try to take him down. So if you're one of the people who thinks that Gilbert Burns' path to victory is taking down Stephen Thompson, let's remind you of a couple of quick things. Only 2 guys have taken down Stephen Thompson in the UFC. They were Matt Brown and Tyron Woodley. Excuse me. So, and not only that, people are only attempting 2 takedowns per fight against him. And wrestling is exhausting. So if he continues to stop the takedown attempts, he's probably going to knock you out late because you're going to gas. And then if we look at the strength of schedule competition, Stephen Thompson, 1.7 ratio, 1.98 for Burns. Thompson's fighting the more experienced competition. The average record of a Thompson opponent is 8.5 and 5, while it's 6.44 and 3.25 for Burns. So both good ratios. Thompson fighting the more experienced competition, but Burns fighting the better ratioed competition. Thompson's wins are better. Better ratio, better total fights. Thompson's average win comes over a guy that's 8-4, while Gilbert Burns' average win comes over a guy that's 5.75 and 3.5. And keep in mind that 2/3 of his career he's been beating lightweights, not welterweights. And then in the losses, we see that Gilbert Burns is losing to guys with a 3.09 win-to-loss ratio because one of his losses is to Kamaru, who's undefeated, 14-0. While for Stephen Thompson, that loss to Pettis kind of screwed up his ratio as he's got a 1.27 ratio in his losses. So I see this fight taking place at range. I see Burns really not being able to take him down, having a really hard time getting inside, and Stephen Thompson either cruising to a decision, or if Gilbert Burns tries unsuccessfully to wrestle and get this fight to the ground and gasses out, I could see a 3rd round finish for Gilbert Burns as well. I'm sorry, for Stephen Thompson as well. And I do have a bet on the Thompson money line. I think I got about 1.5 units on it, around -150. So that's where I'm at, man. I'm feeling Thompson in this fight. I think he probably goes the distance, but I could see him getting a late finish. I think this is a really bad stylistic matchup for Gilbert Burns here. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think you touched on, pretty much all the points I wanted to bring up, like that in 16 UFC fights, he's only been taken down by 2 fighters. Matt Brown back in 2012, where Matt Brown did take him down 5 times. But again, that was 9 years ago. And then against Tyron Woodley, who we don't see it enough as we probably should have, but Tyron Woodley is a very, very good wrestler. He was able to take down Thompson 2 times, once in each fight. Thompson was able to work his way back up. I think an interesting fight was against Hendricks. Which Hendricks was one of the best wrestlers in the division. Hendricks at the time averaged 4 takedowns just about with a 50% accuracy. And Johnny Hendricks went out there in that first round, got in on a takedown, closed the distance. He was able to close the distance there. And, Thompson was able to stuff the takedown, keep it standing, go back to it being at range. And then Hendricks at that point, it was very weird. Hendricks didn't even attempt another takedown because he knew that, hey, he probably wasn't getting it, and Thompson was able to knock him out there. So that was very impressive. And yeah, you mentioned all the great points. Thompson, very hard to close distance on him, very hard to take him down. If you do get him down, good luck holding him down as well. So yeah, I do think if Burns is going to win, honestly, maybe he does get Thompson down, which I see I don't see that happening. If he does take him down, I think Thompson gets back up. But I think for Burns to win, he might have to clip Thompson, and that's possible. Thompson has been dropped a couple times in the UFC. He has been knocked out by Anthony Pettis. But again, it's going to be hard to get on the inside. And you brought up the Dan Hooker fight where, Burns fighting a much longer guy, a guy that doesn't want to stay at range. And Dan Hooker, he really struggled to close the distance. He got dropped 2 times in that fight, got knocked down in the first round. He was rushing in with his hands down. He was, very hittable in that fight as well. And I think that's what Thompson wants. Thompson wants you to rush in with your hands down. And I kind of see Burns, having to do that. If he does not do that, he's going to get picked apart. If he rushes in, he's going to get picked apart. And outside of Burns getting a knockout win, which it could happen for sure, but I just don't think it's all that likely. So you take a look at the line here, and you have Stephen Thompson -158. Some late money is actually coming in on Burns, which makes sense. Burns is definitely a fan favorite. People really like this guy. I mean, really big on social media as well. So I think people do want to put their money on him. Burns now +138. You take a look at the over-under. The over is -155. The under is +120. 25. And I kind of don't hate the under in this fight or like the fight doesn't get a decision, because if Burns wins, I absolutely think he needs a finish. I think he needs a submission. I think he needs a knockout. I would be shocked, honestly, if Burns was able to win a decision, because we talk about it. Not going, going for takedowns and not getting them is going to be very hard on the cardio. I don't think Burns has great cardio. It did look good in the Woodley fight, but that was because Burns was pushing his pace and Woodley pushes no pace. I think Thompson's going to push a much bigger pace on him, and I do think that Burns will slow down as the fight goes on, especially if he's not able to get those takedowns, if he does even try them. But yeah, I think if Thompson wins, it could be by knockout. I don't think Burns has the best chin. I don't think Burns has the best cardio. And if you go back and watch the Vicente Luque fight, Gilbert Burns is not going to be able to take the same shots that Thompson did hit Luque with. I mean, like Luque, he has, some chin on him. I mean, Wonder Boy hit him. I'm going to get the exact stats here. Wonder Boy hit Vicente Luque 138 times. He dropped him in that fight. He hurt him like 3 different times in the fight. And then he also landed 171 significant strikes against Jeff Neal in 5 rounds. So I think the striking advantage is definitely with Thompson. If Burns can get him down, I do think Burns does have a significant advantage. Somebody brought up in the chat, Thompson is a black belt in jiu-jitsu and a brown belt in Brazilian jiu-jitsu. So it's not like, Thompson's a fish out of water, but of course you do got to favor Gilbert Burns on the mat. But the problem is going to be closing the distance. The problem is going to be getting it down to the mat. And the problem is going to be, if he's successful in those first 2, keeping it on the mat, which I just don't see happening. So give me Thompson. I do like him here quite a bit. You brought up the 3rd round prop on our video. I think if Thompson wins, it probably is later, probably after Burns does take some damage. Burns does slow down. Any other final thoughts on this fight?
Not really, man. I just think that Thompson's just a nightmare stylistic matchup for so many guys in this division. And, Burns being a true 155er, I don't think he's going to be able to handle the power of Thompson. I don't think he's going to have the gas tank to successfully win rounds grappling. And I just see Thompson getting this one done, whether it's by decision or late. I think the attrition is going to be a little too much for Gilbert Burns here.
Yep, I definitely agree there. We do have 85 likes on the video already. If we can get 100 by the time we get out of here, that'd be sweet. We do have about 100 watching here, so let's try to get 100 likes. We do need 15 more. What is up, Kris? How you doing? Thompson sitting down on punches equals more KOs. Yeah, he's definitely sitting down on his punches as of late. And like I said, I don't think Burns has the best chin. It's really hard to, mirror Thompson's style. Thompson is very, very unique, so he can bring in whoever he wants. I just don't think it's going to be a huge difference, in my opinion. All right, so now it's time for the main event. Before I do so, please hit that like button. Also, subscribe here to Pub Sports Radio, going live every Sunday, 7:15 p.m. Eastern Time. I will be live on Tuesday as well at 7, talking more on the DraftKings side. I'll also talk some bets as well. So check us out Tuesday, 7 o'clock p.m. Eastern Time for that show. But yeah, we'll get into the main event, which is the most anticipated fight of the year, at least for me. I think it is for a lot of people as well. We have the trilogy. It is 1-1 going into this 3rd fight, and it's a tough fight to call. I can't wait to break it down. We have Dustin Poirier, 32 years old, 5'9", 72-inch reach. Conor McGregor, 32 years old, 5'9", 74-inch reach. And we'll take a look at the last couple of fights between the two. Dustin Poirier did, of course, knock out Conor McGregor in that 2nd round, won a decision against Dan Hooker. He lost to Khabib by sub. No shame in that. Did beat Max Holloway by decision in a fight where Max Holloway did come up a weight class. He did knock out Eddie Alvarez as well. You take a look at Conor McGregor. Did lose by knockout, of course, to Dustin Poirier. Last fight, 2nd round. Did knock out Donald Cerrone. He lost to Khabib by sub as well. He knocked out Eddie Alvarez as well, and then he beat Nate Diaz. So Uncle Weezy, we broke this down on my channel about a week ago. Lots of great stuff on there if you guys want to go check it out. We went about like 40 minutes on that as well, but kind of a condensed version here. What are you looking at?
Let's go. Poirier McGregor. Come on, man. Part 3, let's do it. 34 pro fights for Poirier, 27 for McGregor. 27-6-1 no contest for Poirier, 22-5 for McGregor. 300 minutes on the dot of cage time in Poirier's career, 170 for McGregor. Average fight time below 9 minutes for both of them. Both of these guys have over 12 years in the mixed martial arts game. As far as UFC experience goes, Poirier been much busier than McGregor has. 25 UFC fights compared to McGregor's 13. We got a 19-5-1 record. for Poirier. We got a 10-3 record for McGregor, and almost 2.5 times as much cage time for Poirier. So really, McGregor hasn't been fighting at the top level as long as Poirier has. With 25 of Poirier's 34 pro fights have taken place in the UFC, while for McGregor, it's only about half. So looking at the finished stats here, we're going to see why the fight doesn't go to decision line is just so juiced. And that's because Dustin Poirier overall has a 74% finish rate, almost 50% by KO, a little over 25% by sub. And then if we look at Conor McGregor, 27 fights, 22 wins, 20 of them have been finished, 86% by KO, 5% by submission. And then if we look at how they get finished, Conor McGregor has been finished in all 5 of his pro losses. So one thing that I've said about McGregor is that he's a fantastic fighter, but the second that things that start not going his way, he has a very hard time coming back from adversity. That's not something we've seen out of Poirier. Poirier can come back from adversity. Conor McGregor, I just don't see it. I don't see him coming back from adversity. But if we look at the striking stats here, 5.76 landed out of 11.44 offered for Poirier. 5.58 landed out of 11.37 offered for McGregor. Both of these guys' striking percentage, 50% for Poirier, 49% for McGregor. The big difference is the power, though, and we talked about it when we broke down this fight on your channel. Conor McGregor has heavyweight, elite heavyweight power numbers. He has, you mentioned the fact that he has more knockdowns than Francis Ngannou. This guy's landing a knockdown on 2.27% of the significant strikes that he lands. He's averaging 1.9 knockdowns per 15 minutes. While Poirier, no slouch at 0.8% and 0.7 knockdowns per 15 minutes. But, the power numbers are showing almost 3 times as much offensive power for Conor McGregor than they are for Poirier. If we look at the defensive numbers, they're almost identical. 55% striking defense for McGregor, 54.7. 54.7 for McGregor, 55 for Poirier. Poirier absorbs 4.28. McGregor absorbs 4.76. They're both getting knocked down on less than 0.2% of the significant strikes landed against them. They're both getting knocked down less than 0.2 times per 15 minutes. If we look at the wrestling stats, we see that Dustin Poirier much more likely to go to his wrestling, as he's averaging about 3 takedown attempts per fight, while Conor McGregor is averaging about 2/3 of a takedown attempt per fight. So Poirier is going to be the one that's more likely to try to take this fight to the ground, as he did in the second match. It was one of the adjustments that he pulled out of the hat in order to get that victory. We see that, Poirier is out-controlling his opponents, while McGregor will get out-controlled. We see that 1.56 takedowns per 15 minutes for Poirier, only 0.73 for McGregor. 25% control time for Poirier, 15% for McGregor. Takedown defense, 59% for Dustin Poirier, 67% for Conor McGregor. That's not bad for a guy that's fought Khabib Nurmagomedov. Conor McGregor has faced about 2.5 takedown attempts per fight. I would think it would be more than that. But he's just done such a good job finishing fights early that I'm not surprised a lot of people haven't shot takedowns on McGregor, because he's so likely to pop you coming in. The grappling stats, I would say, are in favor of Poirier, as he's the more active wrestler, and he's very accurate with his takedown attempts. At 37% is pretty good. But if we look at the strength of schedule numbers, we see a 2.32 ratio for McGregor, 1.8 for Poirier. About 18 total fights for McGregor, 12 for Poirier. The average Poirier opponent, 7.8 and 4.3, while the average McGregor opponent, 12.7 and 5.5. So a strength of schedule advantage, according to my metric, for Conor McGregor here, even though Poirier has fought a lot more fights. McGregor was a star coming in, and he has fought some really good competition right from the jump. But the wins for Poirier are spectacular as well. So in terms of who they're losing to, they're both only losing to the top-notch competition. The average record of the guy that McGregor loses to is 14 0.67 and 5.33, while the average record of the Poirier loss, 9.6 and 5.4. So this is going to be interesting. I mean, it really is going to come down to what adjustments are made by both sides in this one. Are we going to see Poirier go to his wrestling again? Are we going to see Conor McGregor kind of go to the type of movement that he showed in the first fight? One of the things that Dan Hardy had broken down, when I like to listen to the technical aspects coming from Dan Hardy, he's so great at it. And one of the things he was talking about was McGregor's movement trying to suck his opponents into his left hand. Because that left hand that McGregor has, man, boy, he has got so much power in that left hand that I want to see him kind of try to use those counterclockwise spinning kicks to kind of suck Dustin into that left hand, which is exactly how he won the first fight. In the second fight, we saw Conor McGregor go to that very boxing-centric style, very heavy on the lead leg, throwing almost exclusively hands. While in the first fight, we were seeing him very light on that lead leg, throwing a lot of spinning stuff, a lot of stuff from a distance, trying to stop Poirier from moving towards McGregor's right hand. So he would kind of come around with the spinning kicks counterclockwise to get Poirier moving back to the left so he could land that power shot. This fight is going to be all about the adjustments that are made on both sides. Both of these guys are studs. Both of these guys have fought the highest level competition. I'm picking Poirier for a couple of reasons that aren't necessarily technical. It's just that when you're a mixed martial artist and you're fighting at the highest level, my hope is that you need to do it. Because, like if somebody gave me $10 million and said, I'll give you $10 million to go in there against Francis Ngannou, I'd rather keep the $10 million that I already have and not die, than step in there against Ngannou. So why would you fight when you have the kind of money that Conor McGregor has after he just stole, he just sold his whiskey company? The guy's almost a billionaire. He doesn't need to get into a cage in his underwear and fight in front of a bunch of drunk grown men. Especially against somebody like Poirier, man. This is, I'm worried about Conor McGregor's motivation for this fight. And especially as I see a guy who has fought at the top level as McGregor. He's been a two-time champion, or a one-time champion at 145, a one-time champion at 155. He's done everything that there is to do in the sport, but still, whenever he loses, he gets finished 100% of the time. So I am leaning Poirier here. I think he just needs to survive the first two rounds. Conor McGregor has never finished anybody after the second round. This is going to be a 5-round fight. Even if you watch the 5-round fight against Nate Diaz that he won, he started looking at the clock late in the second round. This guy wanted that fight to be over about 17 minutes before it was actually over. And if he hadn't won the first 2 rounds so decisively, he wouldn't have won that fight. I think Poirier's got more heart. I think he's got more reason to fight. And I think he's got the more diverse mixed martial arts attack here. As he can go to his wrestling, he can go to that variance of striking, and he doesn't just rely on his power. He can rely on his toughness. He can rely on his defense. He can rely on his grappling. I think he just has more ways to win this fight. But when you look at Conor McGregor, he's got that one thing that can always end a fight, and that is that transcendental power that he has in his left hand. I can't wait to watch this fight. If I was betting on McGregor, I would bet the first and second round KO props and be done with it. And if I was betting Poirier, I would say that he probably gets it done after the 12.5 minute mark, which is when I would think that if McGregor hasn't finished the fight by then, that after the 12.5 minute mark is when we're going to see him start to lose interest in being a mixed martial artist.
Yep, I mean it's a tough fight to call, man. I see why the line is so close, because if you think Conor is going to win, you got to think he's going to get it done within the first 2 rounds. You mentioned it, no knockout wins outside of the second round. I think he has like maybe one or two knockouts outside of that first round. So when he's getting it done, it's definitely in that first round most of the time. You mentioned a lot of great points. You broke it down very well. But at the end of the day, Conor does have that power. So I think I'm going to be out on an island on this one. I see a lot of people going to be picking Dustin, and I don't blame anybody for doing that, because we just saw the fight play out. But we always talk about every single fight's different. Dustin did say in that second fight that, you know, he did get hurt in the Conor fight, the second one, but he just did not go down. And maybe he does go down this time. And, you know, you mentioned some of the big stats here. Conor, 13 knockdowns in the UFC, a knockout rate of 1.9. Like, you just don't see numbers like that. So I think this fight will be different. I think, you know, Poirier probably should try to implement the same game plan, going for takedowns right away, clinching against the fence, maybe, you know, working on the leg kicks as well. I think Conor will be prepared for those, but he's not going to want to stay at range, because when you stay at range with Conor McGregor, you are in danger of getting knocked out. And what I also saw, you know, with Poirier, he gets hit quite a bit. He gets hit a lot more than my liking, especially against a guy like Poirier or McGregor. In that Dan Hooker fight, Poirier did absorb 155 strikes in 5 rounds. Hooker actually outlanded him 155 to 153. In the Max Holloway fight, he absorbed 181 strikes. I mean, if you can't absorb that many strikes against Conor McGregor. So I think for Dustin, when you mentioned, you broke it down fantastic. Dustin's going to have to extend this fight. He's going to have to get into round 2, round 3, but Conor's going to be mostly dangerous in those first 2 rounds. So if you do like Conor, I agree. I'd bet the first round prop. I'd bet the second round prop. I think Conor wins by first round knockout on BetOnline is plus 450. Second round knockout is plus 700. If you do like Dustin, the money, a lot of money is coming in on Poirier, which is interesting, especially like during fight time. We're going to see a lot of money coming in on McGregor, you got to think. But yeah, Poirier now minus 130, McGregor plus 110. I'm really curious to see, you know, how much wider that line gets there. So the fight doesn't go to decision is minus 325. I think on FanDuel it was like minus 550. The under 1.5 plus 150. Don't know if I touched that. The under 2.5, I do have some interest in minus 140. Under 3.5 minus 205. Under 4.5 minus 280. I'm going to kind of sit back and wait on those. I think a lot of people are going to be playing these overs. I already see a lot of people playing the over 1.5. Open at minus 150, currently minus 180. So I'm going to sit back and wait on these props. Not going to bet Conor unless it gets to like plus 120, plus 130, because I really do believe that this should be a pick'em just based off the fact that it is a brand new fight. Every fight does play out different, and Conor does have that power. But as of now, at the plus 110, I'm not all that interested. But yeah, plus 130 on McGregor, I don't see it getting there, but the line is trending heavily in favor of Poirier, which, again, it makes 100% sense. We just saw the fight play out. But yeah, if you guys hear fireworks in the background, the fireworks have just started going off in my city. I'll be watching those in a second here. But yeah, that's about it. I mean, any final thoughts on the main event?
Really, I think we covered it pretty well, and like I said, we went into it like 45 minutes on your channel. So if you're looking for some extra thoughts, go to DFS by the Numbers channel and check out the big time breakdown we did on this fight, man. But the final thoughts are, I can't wait. It's Conor McGregor, man. I mean, the guy is so exciting, and Dustin Poirier is one of my favorite fighters, dude. I mean, if you're not fired up for this one, time to check your pulse, man. I'm ready, dude. Let's go.
I 100% agree. So kind of talk about what we have going on. I did just post a full card breakdown video on my channel, DFS by the Numbers. I'll be posting a DraftKings video. I want to try to get it done tonight. So we'll see about that. That might be on the channel either Monday or Tuesday there. Live stream on my channel Friday, 7 o'clock p.m. Eastern time, Saturday, 1 hour prior to the prelims. And then on Pub Sports Radio, I'll be on Tuesday, 7 o'clock p.m. Eastern time, doing a DraftKings live stream. Also going to be talking some betting as well. You can follow me on Twitter, DFS_numbers, Instagram, DFS by the Numbers. I'll be posting all my bets come fight time. And yeah, thank you all for hanging out. We have 96 likes. If we can get 4 more, get 100 by the time we get out here, that'd be sweet. It's a big card. Really do appreciate all the likes. Really do appreciate all the comments. Let me know your favorite plays down below. I'm really curious to hear what you guys have as well. And I'll pass it to Uncle Weezy. Uncle Weezy, tell them what you have going on, man.
Man, come check me out on my channel on YouTube, Uncle Weezy. I do balls deep breakdowns of several fights. I've already done the Price Pereira fight, and I've already done the Condit Griffin fight, and I'm probably going to do Topuria and Hall next. And there's going to be a few others that I'm going to do. I wanted to do Tuivasa and Hardy, and then potentially Akhmedov and Tavares as well, and Giles Duplessis. But anyway, check me out. It's Uncle Weezy on YouTube. You can check me out on Twitter, MMA at MMA Weezy. And I just like to thank all you guys for spending your July 4th with us, man, and talking fights. I love doing this. I love doing it with Brady, and I'm so glad that you guys hung out with us. You could have done anything tonight, but you spent it with us. I'm about to watch some fireworks, take my dog for a walk, who's been barking for like the last hour. And maybe that means the dogs are going to bark on Saturday, but we'll see, man. Thank you guys all for watching. Thanks, Pub Sports Radio, for having us. Can't wait to do it again next week, man.
Yes, sir. Always a fun time breaking it down, going through the card with you, Weezy. Yeah, again, guys, hit the like on your way out. Talk to you soon. If you want to hit me or Weezy up, Weezy just made a Twitter a couple weeks ago. Go give him a follow. Give me a follow. We'll talk to you guys soon. Thanks again for hanging out and watching. Comment down below your favorite plays. Curious to hear what you guys have to say. And yeah, good luck for UFC 264. Let's make some money. Let's keep killing it. Great card. Good luck, everybody. See you.